The following is a presentation of the iRacing eSports Network.
Hi, I'm Marcus Richardson, driver of the #1 Richmond Raceway Toyota Camry, and you're watching iRacing Live.
Tonight from the Lone Star State, 12 weeks of action all come down to this, as just 167 more laps stand between some of the world's best sim racing drivers and a shot at a NASCAR sanctioned championship and $10,000. Texas Motor Speedway is set to play host to round 13 in the final race of the regular season for this, the 2018 NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. And with only 2 drivers of the top 8 officially locked in, a lot can happen in the next 2 hours. Drivers are right now trackside finishing up their final practice session as we get set to go green flag racing in the Texas 250. So we'll take this opportunity to look back on round number 12 from Pocono 2 weeks ago to see how we got here. It is this week's iRacing race recap. A tricky 250 miles sit ahead of us as the pace car gets set to dive down to the safety of the pit lane. As always, we're happy that you're spending a Tuesday night with us on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing eSports Network. The field is going to be in the hands of Christian Challenger. He needs a big night. He comes into this 15 points out of a playoff spot as he takes the green flag, and we go racing for round 12 on 2018. Watch him spread them wide down the front straightaway as Challenger unchallenged for the race lead. First time to turn 1. You're not close enough yet to make that move. There's also going to be a point in this race when drivers are going to flip a switch and they're going to start to battle for those positions. As you see the fight for the race lead, a lot less space than we had seen before, and this might be a perfect example. Leahy going to flash the nose to the inside of Challenger, and the 78 machine, you can see him, he rolls out of the throttle there. It's almost a game of chicken in that tunnel turn. Nobody wants to go side by side into there. At any other racetrack, if the 24 machine only had that little bit of a nose there, you're probably not getting that spot, but he had that preferred position down low. Challenger did not want to risk it early on, and he lets the 24 going by. I promise you, the 78's not just going to let him run away with this thing. You can see as he hounds him down the front straightaway when Leahy does make that move by applying the pressure early and changes off for the race lead on lap 3. They're currently working lap number 40 of 100 in this race. Even the drivers who have trickled down to the pit lane in the last couple of laps, you're able to go those 60 or 62 or so laps with one stop on fuel. You can't go there on one tank, but at this point, drivers are going to come down, and if we were to stay green, that's the questionable part about a track like Pocono. Certainly you can spread out and see that as Lusa heads down to the pit lane. The 12 machine is Shelton also down. Hurts on pit road as well, so a lot more drivers coming in, but this sets these drivers up for one stop here at about lap 40 and one stop later on in the race right at about lap 70 to be able to make it to the end of this race. Again, that's if we stay green. Nothing guarantees it, but certainly that's what you have to plan on as Keegan Leahy drives by on the front straightaway, continues to make up that ground now as he runs mid-pack. The benefit to a big racetrack like this is when you pit, you don't lose your lead lap status. So I really like the call that Keegan Leahy has made as he's able to get all the way just like that back up into the number 2 position. There's nobody else anywhere near him. At many racetracks is Corey Vincent, I think, the lone driver that still continues to stay out at least a bunch of race leaders. At a lot of racetracks, if you're towards the front of the field, you like to go for that short pit. You want to get the fresh tires and you want to get on some quick lap times ASAP. The problem is you fall off for the lead lap. As you see, Vincent finally come down to the pit lane, took him to lap 42, but he is now in. And when you lose that lead lap status, if yellow comes out, you're in a very bad spot. You'd have to pass up the opportunity to pit to get back to the lead lap. You're going to be at the tail end of the lead lap with no tires, and it is a headache. So the good news here is that's not a factor Leahy had to deal with. I liked his call. You come in, you get your tires, and I think the gap for the race lead is you see nobody behind him for the longest amount of time. That's going to work out very well for the 24 car. If the 6 machine were to be able to get up to Challenger, at that point he would just decide to come down and pit and just kind of make that his marker. But Keegan Leahy, race leader, in from the number 1 position at lap number 60. And you see Ray Alfalla rejoining the racetrack. He went for the short pit as well. But your race leader going to pit with 31 laps to go. And once again, he is one of the first cars in. That 78 to Challenger is significantly slower than the cars who are rejoining the racetrack. You have to start to track the movements of the 24 machine. Keegan Leahy up to P5 already. So a good majority of these cars have gotten service. Challenger, Lusa, Novak, and Duval all the way to come down in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So what do you do in these next few races? Do you play it safe? Do you just ride around? You experiment a little bit? But Keegan Leahy's decided that it's going to be business as usual. He wants the race wins, and he'll come at a turn number 3 for the final time tonight at Pocono. It'll close off at an 89 lap green flag run to the end. and it is going to be his third race win on 2018 and a first since Kansas. Leahy wins from Pocono, third on the season for him in the 2018 NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series, a statement just weeks away from the start of the playoffs.
Oh, that was late.
Hey guys! This week, the 6 on my team are Truex, Logano, Larson, Blaney, Chase, and Suarez. For the rest of you, better luck next week.
She's missing out, dude.
Yeah.
The all-new NASCAR Fantasy Live. Visit nascar.com/fantasy and build your team today.
The road to $10,000 is now just one race away. As tonight for the virtual Texas Motor Speedway, we go racing for the 13th and final time on the regular season as we prepare to set the 8-driver playoff grid for this the 2018 NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series. As always, we're so happy that you're with us on a Tuesday night on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing eSports Network. Alongside myself, Evan Pocono, joined by Tim Terry in the booth tonight. Hugo Luis, our director, is downstairs and getting us to you this evening. And Tim, it all comes down to Texas. This was at one point Bristol on the calendar. You can look for the last great Coliseum maybe to make a return to the calendar for 2019, but it is now Texas and the Lone Star State. One race to go before it really gets serious next week.
And Evan, I'm glad it's here because this is a racetrack that we've gone to since we started this series way back in 2010. It's been here every single year. We've had a few different winners. Ray Alfala's won this race twice, but he hasn't been to Victory Lane since 2012. But when you look at that championship picture, it's going to get tight here at the end of 167 laps. There's going to be some drivers that are heartbroken at the end of the night. Then there's going to be some drivers that are focusing on that playoff stretch.
And the drop is going to be a big factor. The official points headed into tonight has Matt Bussa with 329 and Christian Challenger with 323 in 8th and 9th. That's the cutoff, which officially stands at 6 points. Of course, drivers' worst finish from these opening 13 weeks gets dropped, so the unofficial points right now, with the driver's current drop factored in, has the difference between Matt Bussa and Christian Challenger at 1 point apart, but it is tight with Shelton, Conti, Ottinger, Bussa, Challenger, and Novak. Mullis gets a little bit further back at 24 points off in the number 11 spot, but there is certainly a lot of drivers whose fate is yet to be determined.
And for those that have the calculator out, Challenger's drop is a 5-point drop. That's his worst finish of the season, or his worst points of the season. Boost's is 10, so there's a couple of more points there, but as you mentioned, it factors in to that 1 point that you see on the screen. But not into the woods. If Ryan Luza has a really bad night, he could potentially fall out of that top 8. He looks pretty safe, but he could potentially have a bad night and fall out of there. So this is it's going to be a very interesting 167 laps. We'll see who's on the plus side and who's on the outs after this one.
Only 2 drivers that are officially locked in, Ray Alfala and Keegan Leahy. Leahy picking up that win 2 weeks ago from Pocono. We'll do our best to keep you updated with the points as the night goes on, but we are set to go racing once again from Texas. So let's go trackside. Here's a look at your RaceSpot TV starting grid. Pole position in this one goes to that 24 to Keegan Leahy. He'll try to make it 2 for 2. On the inside of the front row, he's joined by the 36 of Chris Shearburn, who starts in second. Michael Conti in the number 5 rolls off in third. Nick Ottinger alongside him in fourth, and Ryan Luza is your top 5.
Corey Vincent going to roll off in position number 6. Brian Schoenberg in 7th. Great qualifying effort there. Zach Novak in 8th. He's got to dig deep tonight. Bobby Zielinski in 9th and Nick Shelton 10th.
Continuing on through 11th position belongs to David Rattler. Alex Bergeron starts 12th tonight. It is Derek Bordeaux who gets that unlucky number 13 starting spot. We'll see what the 04 Ford can do. Jimmy Mullis rolls from 14th, and Brad Davies rounds out your top 15.
You got Colton Davis in 16th. 17th is Taylor Hurst. Matt Busa 18th. Ray Alfala mid-pack in 19th, and Chris Overland 20th.
The rest of the starting order going to go across to your screen, Tim. We talk about this Texas Motor Speedway, though. The 1.5 mile oval with banking at 20 degrees down, but the field is right now at 1 and 2, 24 degrees down in 3 and 4. I agree with you when you say you're happy it's on the calendar. It is a very fun and a very fast track. What are we looking for specifically tonight?
It produces some great racing. If these guys can get into a rhythm like we saw at Pocono with some long green flag runs, we're going to see some pit strategy come into play, and we're going to see those guys stretch their legs on the long run. But we've also seen a few cautions late in these races, so keep an eye on how the strategy plays out. It's going to go a long way in determining who those top 8 are going to be that are going to battle for the championship.
Race cards getting down and out of our way. As always, we're happy you're spending a Tuesday night with us on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing eSports Network. Let's figure out who's going to fight for a championship. Green flag in the air. We're off and away from Texas. It is the regular season finale at a NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing series, and it is Leahy all alone to turn 1 as he gets us up to speed for the first time. Your pole sitter grows the lead. Shearburn safely second, and Conti maintains third out of a treacherous quarter 2.
We've got about the top 5 or so that are single file right now. They found a spot in the line for side-by-side battle as Vincent on the outside of the double nickel. Brian Schoenberg. Schoenberg clears, and here comes Zielinski on the inside. The 10 and the 15. Novak on the outside line trying to work that one too. The 12 of Shelton on the inside. There's 2 drivers that really need to go here this evening. Nick Shelton on the good side of the bubble. Zach Novak needs to pedal tonight if he wants to make the playoffs.
And Nick Shelton's going to need a very good night, and he helped himself out certainly by getting a decent qualifying effort. The problem is for him, some of the drivers that he needs to make up some points on started this race in an even better position than him, so he's hoping that he can make something work over the course of these 167 laps. And that time by, Shelton going to kind of end up in middle, gains 2 spots, but is unable to complete the pass on Bobby Zielinski, who stays in front of him. Wasn't a good lap for Corey Vincent, who's already dropped 3 spots early on in this one, so Vincent's going to look to pick things back up as the 04 looks to the inside. All the way up front, though, battle for the race lead already. It comes at lap 3. It's Chris Shearburn to the inside on Leahy. They are side by side at a quarter number 4, and it is not just those 2 cars in the fight. Conti right there. Here comes Ryan Luza to the inside, so a fight for third at the same time as the 6 takes that one away. The 24 still looks to defend P1. He'll do so on the high side.
And the 24 looks comfortable on this outside line. I mean, he hasn't really dipped a wheel or hasn't really slid that thing around on the outside. It looks comfortable out there. Chris Shearburn's having to hustle that thing on the inside line, try to get the run at a 4 here. He's not going to do so. Keegan Leahy is going to continue to lead this thing, but the 36 of Shearburn set him up, couldn't make the pass, and now the 6 of Ryan Luza trying to go to the right rear quarter, the 36, and trying to make it happen on the outside line. And oh, by the way, here comes Nick Ottinger in the 05 to join the party as well. He looks underneath the 5. The 6 now looks underneath the 36 as they run down the back into 3.
It loses the car who's been down on that inside of the racetrack. You just saw Leahy use the top to defend, but the 6 likes it way down low, and he didn't see much of a block by that 36 of Shearburn to take that line away, and it is going to be Luza quickly into the number 2 position. He's already +3 for the start of this race after he rolled off the grid in 5th. Just 5 laps to go. Conti, next driver onto the bandwagon. He'll join that inside line, take a spot away from Shearburn, and it looked like Shearburn had a good opportunity to maintain position right off at the start of this race. He's now dropping like a fly on the outside of the racetrack as Ottinger now tries to close that one out. He's not going to get it, though, this time in 4th.
Yeah, they're going to duke it out for that spot, though, coming off the 4th corner. And here comes Brian Schoenberg as you battle side by side. He closes in those guys behind, and Brian Schoenberg, Mr. Opportunity, going to try to take the inside and take one more spot away from Chris Shearburn. This will be the battle for position number 5 as they come off of corner number 2, the 55. Trying to get that run on the outside and use every piece of real estate that he can. They're going to swap lines here. The 55 going to continue to go to the outside line, but he might be in trouble because Novak is now taking a peek to the inside.
One of the best parts about Texas, not only the speed, but just how racy this joint is. And you can see that very early on, even without a lot of rubber put down on the racetrack, and these drivers are able to utilize it inside of the outside line, and it's only going to get better over the course of tonight's 250 miles. The 55, though, again on the outside, didn't gain a whole lot that time. Looked like Novak was going to mount the charge to the inside. He will look low, but this is another case of the 55, just like we saw at Leahy, looking comfortable on the outside. He's not adjusting his line to protect the cars behind him. He's running what he wants to do, and in fact, it's going to pay off because he'll pull up alongside Shearburn. This one, closest battle in the front, is side by side right now. That's P5.
Schoenberg running his own race right now, the 55 on the outside. That thing looks comfortable as well, or at least it has the last couple laps. And now the 15 of Zach Novak sees what Schoenberg is doing, and he's going to hop to the outside line and try to make something happen there. But Shearburn fighting back on the inside, and we saw this with the battle for the lead a little bit earlier on. The 36 is able to hang for a few laps on the inside. 55 will make his way by. Here comes Novak to try to take a peek to the outside. And don't look now, the 83 of Zielinski, the 12 of Shelton there as well. 55 looks sideways in front of the 15 of Novak, and he'll collect it and continue on as we continue to work under green. This is lap number 10.
And you can see this driver start to get a little bit squirrely coming off at turn 2. That's certainly going to be, I think, the calamity corner that we have to keep our eyes on tonight, especially as these drivers work deeper and deeper into some of the green flag runs we'll see this evening. That 36 now kind of pinned down on the inside. We've seen the freight train go low. Now it appears it's somebody outside, as it is Zielinski and Shelton trying to get by. The 83 cuts him down a good little bit, trying to hold that 36 low and prevent him from kind of getting that good wide arc off of the corner that allows him to roll back into the throttle when he would like. You're not seeing the same thing in front of them. The 55 is way up the hill when he's on the outside of the fight with Novak. It looked like Zielinski was being a little bit more aggressive there. It'll pay off. He'll take the spot, and the 12 of Shelton's going to follow him through without hesitation. That's going to be 2 spots down for Shearburn as he tries to get one of them back, still all the way down on that white line.
And I think you mentioned it, the aggressive move per se to try to pinch the driver on the inside line, to try to get your run out of the corner and not allow the driver on the inside to get that run. You see it at the 12 here of Shelton, but he is clear of the 36 coming off the corner. The 10 of Corey Vincent behind, battling with Derek Bordeaux, and there goes the 12 to the inside of the 83 of Zielinski to try to pick up a position, and they'll settle that one for position number 7. The 83 will cross him back over. Nice little move by Zielinski. The 12 will try to keep that position on the high side as they'll come off of corner number 2. Shelton will definitely clear the 83 of Zielinski, and just behind them, Bordeaux continues to go at it with the 10 of Corey Vincent as they try to gobble up the 36. Next, Shearburn sliding backwards right now. Position at number 9 is where he is.
And these fights continue all the way throughout the pack. Obviously, the 10 and the 04 right now closest to the front of the field. And while all of this has been going on, Leahy has grown that race lead that looked like it was under fire not that long ago to now 1.5 seconds over top of Luza, who is still second, and Michael Conti, who continues to defend third. 2 sets of 2x2 once again off into 3, and Real Falla, one of the only 2 drivers who already knows that they're going to be racing into the playoffs for next week. He comes up in this fight with really nothing to lose. Curious if that 2 car may be working on any sort of experimental setup underneath the hood of that car in preparation for the playoffs, or because of the fact that he already knows that he is in, if he's just going to go for broke tonight. But he did not have a good qualifying effort. You mentioned him on the starting grid that he was way back in 19th spot. He's one of the bigger movers already, and he's caught up to this group pretty quick.
I saw his social a little bit earlier, and he said his only goal tonight is to win. He's already locked in to the playoffs. He doesn't really have to do anything else other than go to victory lane, and right now he's storming to the front like a madman. To the outside he goes on the 10 of Corey Vincent. He'll take a position, but now he's kind of boxed in right there, as you see on your screen. You're right with Real Falla. Derek Bordeaux ahead, the 36 to the inside. Really can't go anywhere. This is where you have to be patient. You got to make that pass on the 36 of Shearburn. You got to clear him first. He's still to the inside, and as you get to the corner, you get a better run, but Bordeaux is right ahead of you, and you really can't put it anywhere. If you're Real Falla, this is where you have to be patient right now, and yeah, we're only 16 laps into this race, and Real Falla continues to go to the front of the field, but going to show a little bit of patience right here.
Yeah, he could have probably forced it 3 wide if we were talking about much later on in this race. However, with that quad over there, those 2 kinks on the front stretch can cause for concern. If you're 2 and 3 wide, sometimes very easy to get up and into somebody. So Alfala held his ground, and he was able to clear the 36 down the back straightaway. He'll have the run this time off of the quarter. I expect him to do the same, and he does. So he'll now set his sights on the 04 at Derek Bordeaux. Bordeaux is even having a good night. Can't forget about him as he comes into this one after starting 13th. He's made a couple of gains. I think Alfala went a little bit higher than he would have liked that time. It's not going to cost him much, but certainly go for the race. And the 04 caught the fence there. Bordeaux goes down the track to recover, and that might put him at a disadvantage this time into the quarter. He had a really shallow arc. Alfala's going to look for the big run off of 4, and that mistake is not going to be enough. That was a very good recovery from Bordeaux after nearly throwing it away.
As they battle, though, keep an eye on the driver that has now made his way behind Ray Alfala. That's the 34 of Matt Busa. Busa, we talked about it off the top of the show. That's that driver that is 1 point to the good when you factor in a drop. He's battling with Christian Chalner, so the easy thing would be to say, hey, I got to finish ahead of the 78. The 78 right now is running in 23rd position, so the 34 is trying to at least beat Chalner to stay in the playoff bubble, and so far so good as they continue to battle just in front of him. Ray Alfala back to the inside of the 04 of Bordeaux as you ride along with Chalner right there in the 78. He's got a little ways to go to get up there to the front, but it is a long race in this one. 167 laps to run, and we're about to complete lap number 20, so there's lots of racing to go and lots of points to pick up throughout this one as Ray Alfala finally picks up that spot on Bordeaux and will set his sights on Zielinski. Ray Alfala is in the top 10 in position number 9.
And it only took him now 20 laps complete to make up that many positions, as he's already charged more than halfway to the front after starting mid-pack in this race. He catches up to Bobby Zielinski. The 83 machine is probably 99% sure that he's going to be racing into the playoffs. Technically, only Alfala and Leahy mathematically locked in. Zielinski comes in with a 34-point advantage with 33 cars on the racetrack, so all should be well for the 83 team. Again, he's fairly good. Ryan Luza is fairly good, who runs in second, but he came into tonight with a 20-point advantage. But then it is a big drop down to Shelton. Fifth in the points is only 9 above the cut line. Conti's only 8 above the cut line. So is Ottinger. They're tied for 6th and 7th. And then, of course, Matt Busa only 1 point above the cut line to Christian Challoner. Right now, Busa is currently running in front of Challoner on the racetrack by 12 spots. Again, we'll continue to update you on that playoff picture as the night goes on. Speaking about Busa, he's now in a battle for position. He's been following Ray Alfala through the field, and he's trying to pass Derek Bordeaux as well.
Yeah, that's a nice little battle. We've been watching it here for the last few laps, and you see some comers and goers in this battle. Obviously, the 34 of Busa had an 18th place qualifying effort. Ray Alfala was 19th place on the starting grid. They're making their way closer towards the front of the field. We talk about guys like Corey Vincent falling back, Chris Shearburn falling back. Even Alex Bergeron has lost 9 positions. He had a great qualifying effort tonight in 12th. He's back outside the top 20 already, so he's falling back through the field. There's some drivers coming to the front, drivers fading just a little bit here on this run, but so far so good. Clean and green. Keegan Leahy still out in front by 1.1 seconds over Ryan Luza, Michael Conti, Ottinger, and Novak. Your top 5. There's another driver we have to watch in that playoff picture, as you mentioned. Zach Novak comes in at 10th. He's 13 points back when you factor in that drop. So, yeah, Busa and Chalner can worry about themselves, but they got to keep their eye on this 15 in case he does finish in this top 5, top 3, walks away with a win. That 15 could play spoiler tonight.
And he needs some help. He can go out there and win this race, but the problem is when you are fighting from behind, you need the drivers in front of you to have a little bit of misfortune or just not a great night. You go up there and put a top 5, top 3, even win this race. Something like a top 10 might not even be enough to keep somebody like Busa in this thing. So certainly Zach Novak has started this night off the way he wants, but he is going to need a little bit of help as the points sit right now. Still looks like he would be on the outside in the live championship standings. The fight on racetrack now is once again with the 2 of Ray Alfala and Derek Bordeaux, and the 04 coming back trying to take that spot away. You remember Alfala passed him not all that long ago, but hasn't been able to get around Bobby Zielinski, so that held the 2 up for just a little bit, and the 04 says, all right, I'll take that right back. First time tonight, Alfala goes backwards as he falls to P10, and Derek Bordeaux looks like he's got a new jolt of life.
And there's three drivers tonight with virtually nothing to lose here. Obviously, the 04 Bordeaux not concerned about playoffs. He's concerned about winning. Bobby Zielinski, yeah, mathematically, he could probably fall out of the playoff picture, but he would need a lot of help behind him in order to do so. The two of Ray Alfala's obviously locked in as the 04 goes for a little slide on the inside line, and that almost wasn't settled, and we almost talked about problems for the 83. He doesn't need to have any tonight, but that was almost one on the back straightaway, the 04 of Bordeaux. The only thing he's concerned about tonight, Evan, is going to victory lane, and right now in the top 10 and in position early in this event. Obviously, there's some pit stops to play in and what have you, but looking pretty good so far here at Texas. The 2 of Alfala once again goes back to the inside. One of the most intriguing battles on the racetrack per se is keep a half eye on the battle for the lead, because the 24 had a second-and-a-half lead. It's down to a car length and a half, if that, because Ryan Luza is there. I'm not sure what happened to Keegan Leahy. He may have scraped the wall or something, but he had a huge lead, and now it's down to 2 car lengths.
The battle for the race lead may be on now. That half a second, it very quickly evaporates, and it's not only Luza catching up, but Conti is right there as well. So I have to look back at the lap times to see if there was any, one lap that looked like he lost a ton of time, and that doesn't appear to be the case. Looks like Luza's fall off on the tires has been pretty consistent, so Luza's going to hook this one up, and just like that, on the inside of 3 and 4, he made it look easy, and Ryan Luza going to go to the race lead for the first time tonight. Again, he comes into this race 20 points above the cut line. Doesn't need a win, but it would sure boast well for some momentum headed into the start of the playoffs next week. So he'll go to P1, and here comes Michael Conti, who needs a very good night now. He's the next challenger down low on the 24.
And there's another driver that doesn't necessarily need to win tonight, but anything in the top 5, top 10 would definitely help his effort. Michael Conti comes in 8 points to the good when you factor in that drop. So as long as he can keep it on the racetrack and keep a relatively good run going, we'll see Michael Conti in the playoff picture. And same can be said for Nick Ottinger behind him. He's got to stay on the good, make sure that car stays out of the wall, stays out of the other competitors, and keeps that thing clean. He's in the same boat as Conti. The only difference is that he's got a 5-point drop, and Conti's got a 7 as Conti looks at Ryan Luza up in front as they come out of corner number 4. Conti got a really good run that time out of corner number 4, but so did Keegan Leahy. Leahy flashes the nose to the inside, nothing doing there, but Michael Conti and Nick Ottinger, they've got some pieces tonight that could contend for a win, I think.
It looked very good early on. Michael Conti before this race saying he wasn't quite sure what to expect headed into this race. He was playing the role of both the driver and the engineer over the last couple of weeks, trying to get this car dialed in, and obviously the 5 looking awfully sporty now as he's been able to dispose of the 24, and curious how far down Keegan Leahy is going to fall now, because besides him, and when that gap from first and second, it was 1.5 seconds, there wasn't a ton of space between second on back. So now that he's fallen back to the rest of the pack, there's a ton of race cars all lined up to team up on him. The 05 is Nick Ottinger just able to clear him. The 24 probably could have dove to the inside there if he wanted to, opted not to. Here comes Zach Novak, and the traffic is not going to let up anytime soon. 24 is going to have his hands full here for a while.
This is about a 6-car pack that goes back to Brian Schoenberg in the 55. You see at the very end of your screen right there. And then there's about a 2-second difference between the 6th place pack, or the top 6, and the rest of the field that we were watching a little bit earlier as the 15 of Novak. You see that run there at a corner number 2. Look to the inside of Keegan Leahy. He couldn't get there off of corner number 2, but 24 definitely going the wrong way right now as the 15 hops to the outside, and Schoenberg will try to dig on the inside of that main performance PC number 55 as the 15 has a moment coming out of corner number 4. That thing was sideways. It opens the door even further for the 55 as he goes to the inside.
Goes to the inside of the racetrack, tries to make this pass now. The 55, a little bit of a bobble in the center of the corner, but the 55 can't get up, and these two drivers about leaning on each other as they fight on lap number 35 with 167 here tonight from the Great American Speedway. The battle between Luza, Conti, non-existent. They got to 1-2, and they've stayed about equidistant between each other since then. Next side-by-side battle, you'd have to trace back to Zelensky and Busa, who are side-by-side right now in 9th and 10th. So fight with the 55 is the place to be as Schoenberg gets it. The the 15, I should say. Maybe looking for a crossover. That's not going to happen. And now you look back at that fight mid-pack there. Alfala trying to get around Zelensky. A lot going on, but for the first time in a little bit, maybe your top three can settle down, take a deep breath. It's been a very great opening 36 laps of this one so far.
13 car of Brad Davies taking a look to the inside of the 11 car of Colton Davis as they go down the front straightaway. They got Ray Alfalo right ahead of them as you ride on board with the 13. The 83 is Zelensky, goes to the inside, close quarters there up on the outside line. The 11 and the 2 nearly made a little bit of contact. Ray Alfalo on the outside line, stacking up the 11 a little bit of Davis. Oh, sideways is Ray Alfalo down to the inside, and oh boy, he almost bought the farm in the back straightaway. Great piece of driving there. The 2 is definitely ill handling right now. He gets past 3 wide in the middle.
It was such a strange issue with Alfala. He was coming down the back straightaway, and it almost looked like that car had grazed the fence, but just got loose on him in the center of the straightaway, and it certainly will cost him dearly. You see all of the cars that were able to get on by him. He will get his feet back underneath him, and I don't think the slot was enough to really burn up those tires at all, so I don't think this takes him out of this, but certainly a little bit of a blip drops him back to 13th. He had gotten as high as P9, and he stormed there in the first 20 laps of this race. He gained 10 spots. In the 9 laps since then, he's lost 4 as the 11 of Colton Davis goes through the grass on quarter exit. That car also sideways, so Alfala's not the only one that's starting to struggle with handling nearly 40 laps into a green flag run.
And with Colton Davis, he nearly lost a few positions because he had them lined up behind. He had Jimmy Mullis and Logan Clampett getting ready to go to the inside of him, but he'll keep it in position at number 14. He'll lose a couple on that exchange going through the grass, but as you mentioned, a lot of these drivers ill-handling race cars right now. We saw Keegan Leahy fall back. We've seen Ray Alfala have a moment. The 11 of Davis have a moment. As you ride on board with the 66 of Blake Reynolds to the inside, he goes on the 27 of Jimmy Mullis. There's Logan Clampett ahead of him, and I know Logan would have wanted to battle for a playoff position. He's on the very outside cusp. If something does happen, the perfect storm happens, we might see Logan in the playoffs, but I know he wanted a little bit more out of this 2018 season, but he's going to go for a win. Do I see cars on pit road?
Taking a look as we now 40 laps into this race, there are drivers that have head down to the pit lane. See if it's any of your top runners or if so far just some drivers mid-pack taking a swing at it. It looks like Joe Lotteriello's down pit road. Ray Alfala now just coming in. Bobby Zelensky's down to pit road. So those last two really the first of the front runners to head down pit road at lap 40. Obviously going to go for the decision for tires and fuel as they look, Tim, to maybe make this race if it were to stay green on what would possibly be 3 stops, you figure, or 4 stops, should say, depends on where you fall, because right now at lap 40, if you can go a little bit longer, you can go about 40 to 80 to 120, but the race distance is 167, so you need a tad bit more than that length if you want to go 3 stops, again, assuming this race has a lot more green flag action in it. Let's see if Loser responds from the race lead. He does not come in, neither does Conti from P2.
And you mentioned some of these drivers are definitely going to be on different strategies. These drivers do have race strategists. If you're new to the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing series, these drivers have crew chiefs that are crunching the numbers, doing fuel mileage, and making sure they know what they have to do to get to the front if this thing does go 167 laps consecutive green, or we do have a caution in there, and strategy does have to come into play, but you'd almost have to believe that it's going to force the hand of the leaders at some point here. Ryan Lewis is going to stay out on the racetrack one more lap and lead this one on lap 43. The top 5 stay out. I believe that might be Busa coming on to pit road right here. Indeed it is. You saw Keegan Leahy a couple of laps ago, though, with a very extreme entrance onto pit road, very aggressive at the line. I think he got away with it, but he was aggressive storming the line in that number 24. You know how bad he wanted adjustments to that race car.
And also to keep in mind, one thing that we talked specifically about is it looks like maybe there was a penalty. Keegan will have to see if that was the case, but the 24 machine did sit in that pit stall for an awful long time, so Leahy may have been busted for a speeding penalty on the pit lane entrance. That'll certainly hurt him after he had a rough 10 laps leading up to that trip down to the pit lane. But the other thing to keep in mind, in comparison to Pocono, Tim, where we were 2 weeks ago for the last race out on the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing series, where we talked about the pit strategy there, the big thing that we noted was because of the sheer size of that track, you could go for the short pit and not drop down a lead lap. That same luxury not afforded to the drivers here as things get very crazy out there on the racetrack. You're going to have drivers on fresh tires working around those on old tires. The likes of Alfala, Zelensky, they've all lost their lead lap status, having to come down pit road early. Alfala looking to get his back here shortly, so that is a concern and maybe a deterrent for drivers to take that short pit, as if you get a yellow, you're stuck a lap down. That was not a concern 2 weeks ago, always something that varies track to track.
And you're going to see that here, especially if we do have some drivers try the one less stop strategy than the others that came down pit road already early on this run. But as you see, Ray Alfala, he is the first driver scored his 1 lap down, and right now in position number 21. There is your leader, Ryan Luza, coming off of corner number 2. You've got Conti a little ways behind. Luza's been able to extend this lead over Michael Conti on this run to about 1.5 seconds. Ottinger in 3rd, Schoenberg in 4th, and Zach Novak in position number 5. But as you mentioned, once again, the strategy is going to change here throughout this race. And there's Schoenberg. There's Brian Schoenberg having a great run here this evening. I know he's had an up and down season. I know he's been a little bit frustrated with the way his year has gone, but it's really great to see the double nickel run up front and run in the top 5 here. And it looks like that whole race team, Michael Conti, and I know they've had a satellite operation with Nick Ottinger this year already, but it looks like they are having a really good run. Whatever they hit on the setup, it looks like it's working for them so far tonight.
So far, so good. A lot of drivers have shown a good bit of promise very early in this one, but we did see a lot of cars really start to struggle towards the latter end of that green flag stretch. Texas pretty infamous for eating up some tires. Racetrack that has been around since '96, and of course the quad oval formation at the Texas Motor Speedway since the year 2000. So when it was scanned into the iRacing surface, it's a very abrasive racetrack. An easy example is Ryan Luza, who still has stayed out and could, instead of going for that 40-80, 120-ish strategy, could even try to stretch it. They have fuel to do a 2-stopper anywhere from lap 55 to 60. You then have to come down to the pit lane 115 to 120. You could make it on fuel to the end. The question is, do you have the pace? Luza's fastest lap of this race was lap 2, and it was a 28.6. His last lap was a 31.1, so you're nearly talking about 3 seconds of tire fall off, and that's going to be a big factor in if the drivers believe they have pace to be able to pull off a 2-stopper, or if they'll go with what everybody who has already pitted has decided on, which would be the 3-stop call.
There's Nick Ottinger down on pit road. Novak is going to come to pit road as well on this lap. And I'm surprised Brian Schoenberg or Michael Conti did not come down on that lap either, but keep an eye on them. I'm sure they're going to come down at some point here relatively soon. The 5 of Michael Conti's getting passed left and right by what is right now lap down traffic. The 2 of Ray Alfala and the 04 of Derek Bordeaux just went by the 5 of Conti on the inside. He's going to be passed by Davies as well. So he's going to stay out on the racetrack, lap number 52, being worked on the board for the 5 of Michael Conti, your leader Ryan Luza, and the rest of this field. Ray Alfala going to work by the leader here momentarily. I'm sure he's creeping in on Ryan Luza, about 2 seconds or so behind. That is your 18th place vehicle right now for Ray Alfala.
And that kind of marks the front of this group of cars who looks to work their way back through the field and get back in this thing. Obviously, the sooner you pit, the better you got those fresher tires on, but the slower that car is going to be at the extreme long end of a run. But for somebody like Luza, I think at this point, if you've gotten to lap 53, you're not on that lap 40 mentality. It certainly looks like he's going to be one of the drivers to pull the trigger and try to mix things up. But again, he's in a position 20 points above the cut line where you can take a move like this. The interesting question I think I would have, Tim, is if you're somebody like a Conti right now in second, only 9 points above the cut line. There's other drivers in a very similar situation as him. Do you see that as a position that forces you to kind of go for this longer call to mix it up? Or because you're so close, do you not want strategy to be the thing that messes you up in the very end, and then you decide, therefore, to take it easy? Looks like Conti's taking that gamble, if you want to call it that, trying to work with older tires and less stops. Just curious, I think, to see that out of a driver who's so close to the bubble, but they feel like that's the right decision.
And you know what? Shelton's in the same boat, too. He sits 11 seconds behind the leader and about 6 or 7 seconds behind Michael Conti. There he is on your screen right now. He's 9 points up when you factor in that drop. He's on the same strategy, but I think you really have to be committed right now to this strategy if you are still out on the racetrack. If you're Nick Ottinger, you're pretty much in the middle of it, and Ottinger is 8 points up coming in. There's Logan Clampett to pit road. But yeah, I think if you're out here now, you've pretty much committed to this strategy. Speaking about committed, here comes Luza. I think Michael Conti is coming in on this lap as well. He is slow in turn 4. Brian Schoenberg should be in behind him. Chris Shearburn is coming in. So here's the audible. Everybody else is down on pit road that's on this strategy, at least throughout your top 5. I think Kerwin's the first one to stay out from position number 6.
Looks like he did stay out. Shelton's also going to be coming down to the pit lane. And if this is the call that you want to go with, I think it's the right time. And Luza and company come down pit road at lap 55. If you go that same distance, you'll pit at lap 110, and then right at about lap 165 is when you would make that same distance. So it looks like this could be a call that gets these drivers to the end. The question comes down to what in the end is a better call. 3 stops with a lot more fresher tires, or only taking 2 stops, but of course running on those older tires for a much longer time. This is going to put the drivers on this presumably 2-stop call behind the 8 ball a little bit. It is going to cycle the drivers who have already pitted to the race lead. Again, all of that is subjective. If this race goes green to the end, don't look too much into the current running order. I know it seems a little bit strange to say that. Of course, the benefit of all of this is the drivers who pitted earlier are in front now. So if a caution flag were to come in at any point, especially in the treacherous moments that we saw with fresh cars, with fresh tires, get it out on the racetrack with some of the guys still limping it around, you would be in a better spot. So certainly there appears to be 2 very clear and very different strategies in play. Ryan Lowe has just pitted for the race lead. It looks like that might just about wrap most of this up as Ray Alfala gets on by Taylor Hurst, and I believe once he catches up to the 04 Derek Bordeaux here shortly, it will be Ray Alfala headed back to the race lead in this one. Bordeaux, somebody who in that 04 machine has done a very good job though of being quiet in all of this. He actually exited the pit lane behind Ray Alfala when the pit stops began. He pitted at lap 42 and he passed Ray up on this run. So that is not a car in front of Alfala that he is simply trying to catch and pass like most of the cars. That's a straight up fight for position, and as the last time by, Bordeaux was better, so the 04 might have figured something out here.
And they were battling amongst the top 10 or so on that first run before all this pit stop strategy began to go down. So it doesn't surprise me that Bordeaux is up front, but it doesn't surprise me that Ray Alfala is within striking distance either. You just saw Marcus Richardson go by on your screen. That was the 1 car. He is now back on the lead lap in 29th position. But as you mentioned, if this thing stays green, it's going to be quite an interesting strategy going forward. We mentioned those guys started pitting around, lap 40 or so. So within the next 20 laps or so, we might start seeing some of those drivers come down for a repeat visit on pit road. And the guys that just came down pit road on lap 55, well, they're going to be staying out on the racetrack for a few laps longer than those guys that are on that other strategy. So this is definitely going to play into effect. But once again, if a caution does come out at some point, it's going to change all that strategy for those guys that are on that longer window. They're kind of hoping that the caution comes out at lap 85 or 90 or so when all those other drivers that come down pit road. But we'll see how this all plays out and all this transpires. You see the 05 of Nick Ottinger on your screen. That's Bobby Zielinski on the outside. That would be a battle for position number 4 right now as Nick Ottinger tries to get a little bit closer towards the front of the field. We mentioned guys like Ottinger and Conti and Schoenberg having great runs, but the Chaos crew has had a great run as well. You mentioned those 3 drivers running up front. You got Nick Ottinger right now, the best of the Chaos crew in position number 4. Some of those other drivers just came down pit road, and they're going to be working back to the front of the field sooner rather than later.
It is interesting that you sometimes see those varying strategy calls amongst team cars. The Oneida machine into this picture. David Rattler is not for position. The 05 and the 83 are. But he is one of those cars who has pitted recently, has fresher tires, and it looks like there's going to be enough separation in the fight for 4th and 5th that it really doesn't play all that big of a factor. But through one cycle of pit stops, I guess, too, if you want to call it that, we continue to work now into this race. This portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Peak Antifreeze and Coolant, the official antifreeze of NASCAR and the proud title sponsor of the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series. The 09 gets on through, so here's your intervals. Bordeaux leads half a second to Ray Alfala. Another 4/10 back is Brad Davies, who's doing a pretty good job at trying to maintain with the two. They didn't have the best trip around the racetrack the last time by, but he's still there third, and then a significant jump to 2.5 seconds or so, where you'll find Ottinger, Zelensky, 4-5, Overland, Luz, Abusa, Pitgrass, and Conti look like they are your top 10 runners. And speaking of Michael Conti, he's in a hornet's nest right now. The 29 of Pitgrass up on the outside. Conti will pass him low and jump right back into the top 10 just after losing it. And the 10 himself, Cordy Vincent, wants to get up there also, but didn't pull the trigger.
And they've got Novak right ahead of them as well. That would be 9th place for the 15 of Zach Novak. Just actually got a message from Brandon Hastings. He's the crew chief on the number 5 of Michael Conti, and he's a tire guy on Penske Racing, and they're actually down at Homestead Miami Speedway doing some testing. So he's from outside the office right now as Ryan Luza takes a look at Bobby Zelensky, and that was almost a 3-wide effort there, and that is a battle up in the top 5. There goes the 6 to the inside, and he'll try to pick up 2 for 1 on this one and move to position number 5. But some of these crew chiefs are not necessarily in their comfortable position right now, and with all this strategy going on, it's going to make it a little more uncomfortable per se throughout this evening of racing, as the double clutch number 47 of Overland loses a spot there and will try to reel back in that number 83. And oh, there's the 34. Where did he come from?
They slice it, move to the inside. You go on board with Matt Busa. He's got a nose in front of Zelensky. He looks for the bite off of the corner, and he's pretty much got it. He'll get him by the time we reach turn number 1. There it is, as Busa now slides back up into P6. The 47, Chris Overland, a little bit of different colors on board that entry tonight. Still got a hint of that yellow that we're used to seeing, but it's a nice blue 47 Ford Fusion this week for Chris Overland. Not the immediate colors that you expect to see him in, but he's had a fantastic night. He's somebody else who has gone 20 at the P8. And for Tim, all of these cars that we talk about having good nights, having started way back somewhere and having made up a ton of spots, again, there are an equal amount of drivers who have had rough starts to tonight. It's just difficult to identify them. You look at a Schoenberg, who started 7th runs in 16th. Look at a Shearburn, who started 2nd runs in 19th. They haven't necessarily had bad nights. Again, a lot of that just the variance in the strategy that we see right now as we continue to watch the fight for 7th. Doesn't go to the inside that time, but Overland certainly on the prowl as he's right there now, maybe looking high side, trying to find the best route to get around the 83.
It might be the way the strategy is playing out, but as long as that strategy plays out at 167 and puts those drivers in a position to collect some points and collect some good finishes, that's really all that matters at the end of the day. As Overland tries to look at Zelensky for a spot, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they may have had a run-in or 2 throughout this season, so just keep a half eye on those guys as we continue out throughout this run. 47 goes way wide in 3 and 4, and way up the racetrack he goes, and I don't think that's going to work. Zelensky goes up and tries to prevent the run. The 47 slide jump down to the inside, so what do I know? He gets the run off corner number 4, and Overland picks up the spot.
He gets the spot, slides high, and 83 might have crossed him over, but here comes Michael Conti now. It always seems we see a fight between 2 cars, and somebody else comes in, 6 or nose, and mix. This time it is Michael Conti, who's done a very good job of being able to crawl back towards the front, one of the lead chargers of that secondary strategy of trying to go a little bit further in this race. The view out of the front end of the entry of Bobby Zelensky gives you a great view of the fight right now. That is for 7th and 8th on track, and just look how low Conti is. Those left side tires essentially down on that white line, oh so close to clearing, but in turn 2 sometimes it's best to not risk it. He'll go to finish him off this time in turn 3 as the 47 looks to hang on. Not sure it's going to happen, a small bobble, and that'll do it. Conti, good aggressive fight, clears off the corner. The 47 wants to challenge back down to 1, but it's not going to happen.
Michael Conti bringing that Chevrolet to the forefront right now, running in position number 7, and he's got a little more work to do to catch Matt Busa, but obviously, as we mentioned, the tire strategy a little bit different at this point in the race on lap number 72, but Conti going to try to reel in the 34 car sitting in position number 6 and about 1.4 seconds or so in front of him for that position. Brad Davies having a good run, and actually, when you look in front of the field, the field is kind of accordioning back together. The 04 of Derek Bordeaux has the lead, but hello, Nick Ottinger. Ottinger is there looking for the top spot. Ryan Luza has made the move. Ray Alfala falling back a little bit, and here's where the accordion comes back in. This tire strategy playing effect, and the 05 is on the back bumper of the 04 looking for the lead.
Back on the back of the 04 machine, trying to take over the race lead in this one. There's the move to the inside. It's going to be a three-way fight for the race lead as this all happens at once. Luza going to close in from third with a side-by-side fight for the race lead now is Ottinger on the inside of Bordeaux. The 04 doing a good job of getting back on the throttle off of the corner. He'll keep him honest, and that fight will continue down the back straightaway and into corner number 3. That last time Luza decided to stick with the 05, does he want to go 3 wide? He sticks the nose in the middle, does not commit that race car to that spot, and it will be Nick Ottinger, new race leader at a corner number 4. How long is that going to last, though, with a fast number 6 Ford hot on his heels? The 6 wants both spots at once as he'll go to the inside now. It is Luza trying to go to the point. Is he going to get it out of turn number 2? The 05 can't hang on, and with a wiggle, 3 changes for the race lead in as many laps. This time, Luza goes to P1.
Just barely enough to clear the 05 and get that run down the back straightaway. Nice move by the fast track Sims, number 6 of Luza, and he will go to the top of the board to complete lap number 75. Ottinger back to second, Bordeaux to third. Brad Davies is a part of the mix as well. He's about a second behind this, sitting up there in position at number 4, and that car on the high side there as he comes off of corner number 2, and Ray Alfala has fallen to position number 5, but that differing pit strategies we mentioned. And oh, by the way, David Rattler is there as well in the 09 car, and I believe he's trying to get a lap back. He would be the first driver 1 lap down that is in this mix, and you're right on board with the Lockdown Racing 09 as he tries to get back up here and get back on the lead lap in position number 29. This is about the time, though, Evan, that I think we're going to start to see those guys at least think about heading down pit road that are on that early tire strategy. We saw them around lap number 40 coming in the first time. It's at lap 76 right now, so 40 plus 40 is 80, so we should see these guys at least thinking about coming down pit road if you're on that early strategy.
Yeah, certainly anywhere in the next 10 laps would keep you in a position to have all 3, or I guess I should say all 4 of those stints across your 3 pit stops be consistent in that 40 lap range to the end of this race. So if that is going to be the case, certainly drivers are going to be headed down pit lane sooner rather than later. If you're just joining us, 78 laps nearly complete from Texas, and so far incident-free in the last race before the playoffs for the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series. We look to the race leader, though, not going to bite this time, and his pit stops are probably going to overlap with us crossing the halfway point in this race. It has been a blistering pace thus far from Texas Motor Speedway, and again, we are continuing to do our best to follow along with what the current point situation is, but Ryan Lewis is somebody who comes into tonight in a very comfortable spot, but looking to make a statement. It has been a while by his standards to have not been in victory lane. Last time we spoke with Ryan Lewis in victory lane, it was at Michigan. That one was round 8 on the season. He has not won any of the last 4 races. That ties the longest winless drought of him on the season. So for somebody who's had that high of a standard, certainly look for him to make some noise here in the regular season finale. You're watching a fight with Chris Overland and Zach Novak. That's for P8, and Novak's going to go to the inside, and relatively easily they exchange those 2 spots.
You mentioned about that playoff picture. You look at Zach Novak, he's on the outside looking in and really needs to have a good run this evening in order to lock himself into the playoff picture. But you look at those guys that are inside the bubble, on the good side of the bubble right now. You've got Matt Busa, he's in the top 10 right now. He's running in 7th. Nick Ottinger in the top 10, running in position number 2. Michael Conti in the top 10, running in position number 5. Nick Shelton is on that late strategy. He's making his way up. He just made the move on Christian Chalner for position number 14, and Chalner is that driver on the outside looking in right now. So a lot of those drivers that are running for that playoff picture, as you see Chalner on your screen in the 78 with Shelton right ahead of him, those drivers that all quote-unquote need to have a good run to put themselves in the playoff picture are all having good runs. Somebody's going to need to have bad luck in order to let somebody else slide into their spot, which is great. This is what we like to see coming into a cutoff race, but somebody's going to have to give. Somebody's going to have a crack in the armor, but we still have, as you mentioned, half of this race to run. There's Brian Schoenberg on your screen in the 55. He's made the move on Bobby Zielinski, and that is for position number 10, so move the double nickel back up into the top 10.
Job by Schoenberg to continue his charge to the front of the field. And again, a lot of this subjective on where all of these drivers sit and varying pit strategies that we have seen so far. Doing it out that having run 82 laps now, 28 cars still scored on the lead lap. Everybody who started this race is still in it. Joe Letteriello is all the way at the back in 33rd. He is on pit road 20 laps down, but he is not officially out of this race. So far, nobody has officially retired from this one. Jimmy Mullis is 5 laps down for 32nd. And then it's David Rattler, Taylor Hurst, Keegan Leahy, 29th through 31st of the drivers who run just that single lap down. Is a brief overview of what we have seen so far in this one. The 5 of Michael Conti is trying to get around the 09 machine. That's a lapped position. As you see, Keegan Leahy now is down onto the pit lane. Who started on pole in this race, but got penalized the last time down. A lot more conservative this time through as he gets onto the pit lane to make up for that big mistake from earlier.
The 04 of Derek Bordeaux, the 13 of Brad Davies kind of popped the cork on this round of green flag pit stops. The lap previous to that, they are now back out on the speedway or rejoining the speedway in corners number 1 and 2. You see them there. Zach Novak made a move around them, and that Zach Novak is now in position number 5. And with those drivers coming down into pit road, Brian Schoenberg, who just slapped the wall coming out of corner number 2, has position number 6. So this is where everything begins to change. The 2 of Ray Alfala, I believe, is on pit road as well. There's a few drivers in that first group, that first strategy that we saw at around lap 40. Those guys coming down into pit road, they're down again at around lap 85. And there's the 34 flashing on your screen there, Matt Busa, headed down towards his crew to get some attention. The 6 of Ryan Luza continues to be your leader. He'll stay out on the racetrack, this time by a complete lap 86 on the racetrack.
Right about now as we cross over to the halfway point. We'll hold off on giving you a look top to bottom until some of this cycles through, makes it a little bit easier to make sense of where we all sit in the grand scheme of things. But your top players on that 3-stop strategy have started to come down to the pit lane. It has handed things off for the moment to Luza, Ottinger, Conti, Novak, and Schoenberg, who at the moment run right now positions 1 through 5. As we have crossed over the midway point and into the second half of tonight's race, this portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Herculiner Bedliner. The tough comes easy, and it is going to be tough for a lot of these drivers to make the right call, because everybody thinks in their own mind that my strategy is the best strategy, and in reality, the 2-stop call, the 3-stop call could be pretty close, but at the end of the day, it's only going to allow one driver to get to 167 laps completed faster than anybody else. There is no win and you're in this NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing series. So again, all of it falls down to those championship points that we have been referring to and we will continue to refer to as the night goes on. So if you're the aforementioned Jimmy Mullis, 24 points down, to Taylor Hurst from 26 down, or Logan Clampett from 28 points below the cutoff, there is no magic win and get yourself in situation. You're going to need drivers to have issues, and there's a lot of guys in that boat, Tim, that not only need good nights but need a little bit of misfortune for some of the cars in front of them, and you don't tend to get a lot of that in a race that goes caution free.
Yeah, those drivers that you just mentioned, Jimmy Mullis, Taylor Hurst, and Logan Clampett, I don't want to say they need a perfect storm, but that's essentially what they need to get themselves into the top 8. And we mentioned about 20 laps ago, those drivers that are on the cusp, that are on the bubble, at this point are running in the top 10 or around the top 10, having good runs here this evening. Of course, you saw that flagman a few moments ago. The only thing that would change it would be for him to wave the caution flag here this evening. There's not really much else that's going to change that strategy. There's a 36 of Shearburn to the inside of the 12 of Shelton. And hello, Bobby Zielinski. Zielinski going to go to the outside. We're going to go 3 wide for a moment at a corner number 4. Zielinski's going to zip by those two and start making his way back up towards the front and try to get a couple of positions and get back on the lead lap. 47 of Overland to the inside as well. But as we mentioned, the differing strategy is going to play out here now. We mentioned the second group per se, or the drivers that stayed out the longest. The first time they came down pit road was in around lap 55. So if they continue that strategy, guys like Conti, Ottinger, Brian Schoenberg, Luza up in front, they should be down pit road around lap 110 or another 20 laps or so.
The difference between those stops and the strategies is going to become a lot more noticeable as this race goes on. Staying out 15 laps longer than the rest of the guys the first time means you're staying out on the racetrack about 30 laps longer this second time, and the hope is that eventually that'll build up through all the number of pit stops to completely eliminate the need for an entire trip down to the pit lane. And again, a lot still be determined in this one. Again, a lot of the running position subjective as we kind of break down all of the strategy for you, but while everybody settles in line for a brief moment, let's take this as our opportunity to take a look at our iRacing midway race break, brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service. iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks from all around the globe. And in the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is a one-stop shop for online racing with officially sanctioned racing for the likes of NASCAR and many more. At lap number 94, it is Ryan Michael Luza leading this race as he looks to drive off on this strategy call for what would be a 4th win on the season. If he's able to do that, he would sit at the top of the playoff points headed into next week, courtesy of some of the bonus points headed out for trips to victory lane. Nick Ottinger right now running in the number 2 position. Behind him, Michael Conti. Actually, they just swap out spots, so Conti going to jump to 2nd. Ottinger falls to 3rd. Brian Schoenberg is in a big mess right now for P4. Zach Novak has scored 5th. Logan Clampett is 6th at the moment. Nick Shelton runs at a number 8 spot. Colton Davis is 9th. And Casey Kerwin rounds out your top 10 right now.
And as you mentioned, this continues to change, but Casey Tucker right now all by his lonesome in position number 11, having a good run right now in the number 28 car. Great to see. Ryan Lowe is in 12th. Alex Bergeron is in 13th, about where he started. Blake Reynolds, we saw him about 2 or 3 laps ago have an absolute handful in that race car. He runs in position number 14 right now as it stands, with Michael Guest in position at number 15. Phil Diaz in 16th place right now as they run on the racetrack. Marcus Richardson in position number 17. You got Derek Bordeaux in 18th. Brad Davies in 19th. And currently, as we say, that the last driver on the lead lap and the first driver 1 lap down is the man that is leading that first strategy per se, I guess we can call it. Ray Alfalo, 1 lap down in 20th.
And Ray Fowler right now in 20th was running about 5th before he decided to come down to the pit lane. Behind him also a lap down. Everybody through 30th right now is a lap down. That'll include Taylor Hirsch 21st, Matt Busa 22nd, David Rattler 23rd, Bobby Zielinski 24th, and Chris Overland who runs in 25th. P26 right now is Corey Vincent. Brandon Pitgrass is 27th with Christian Challoner. P28, 29th is Adam Gilliland, and Andrew Fayash the 3rd. In 30th, just to put a bow on everything, 31st, Keegan Leahy is 2 laps down. 32nd, Jimmy Mullis is 5 laps down. And Joe Letteriello continues to sit on pit road all the way at the back in 33rd position. It is a look top to bottom at your iRacing midway race break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, you can visit iRacing.com to sign up today. And if you are looking to sign up for a first-time iRacing membership, if you go to iRacing.com/membership, you can get some offers and some exclusive promos anywhere from a 3-month iRacing subscription to a 2-year commitment, 40% off to new iRacing members only. All of that information and more is at iRacing.com/membership. But now, Tim, as we close in and as Ryan Luza comes off for turn number 4, he will take lap number 100 from the Texas Motor Speedway. We start to count down down towards the end of this race, down into the second half, and it is beginning to look like that longer strategy, which some drivers may have questioned because you're going a lot longer on tires on a very abrasive racetrack, appears at least it did that last time through, and again, we're not going to know the whole picture until we get to the end, but looked like it might have been even the more popular decision, whereas earlier in this race, I would have suspected more drivers would have gone for the 40 stints.
I don't know about a popular decision, but it looks like it's definitely the decision right now that could very well win this race if this thing does stay green. You see Shelton on your screen with Davis to the inside as they'll dance down into corner number 3 for the position there. It looks like the 11 will take that spot away from the 12, but right now as it stands, Ryan Luza 2.1 seconds ahead of Michael Conti. Ottinger back from Conti by about 1 3/4 seconds or so. Brian Schoenberg then is back about 7 seconds or 8 seconds behind Nick Ottinger. So the drivers that are on that second strategy, there's a lot of separation per se between them, or they've grown some separation between them. Obviously anything can change on pit road, as we saw with Keegan Leahy on that first run. So keep an eye on those guys if they do decide to come down pit road here, and they should be down momentarily within the next 10 laps or so.
If they're right on the cusp of being able to hit their number to the end, these guys could probably even come down to the pit lane now, be able to make it on fuel, but the idea is, again, to do as minimum damage on your tires, make those runs as about equal as you can all the way through to the end of this race. So I think they will pretty much stay with that previous distance of 55 laps apiece, and they'll be down pit road and almost right on the money when we come around to lap 110. You go on board right now with the 36 of Sherburne, and there's a spinner in front of him. It's Zach Novak. P5 on track is going to go all the way through the grass, and he will rejoin the racing surface in turn number 1. He was very loose. It looked like he might have caught a little bit too much of the apron. All kinds of sideways, and that'll get your heart pumping as Novak hangs on and avoids bringing out what would have been the first yellow.
That almost changed everybody's strategy right there, but the 15 is Zach Novak, as you see on your screen, just caught the apron coming out of corner number 4, went sideways, went through the grass, and back on the racetrack, and he lost a couple positions out of that. Obviously, you saw Sherburne riding behind him, and there's a couple of more positions that he lost. He's back behind Clampett right now in position number 9, but Zach Novak, little ride through the grass, he saves it. We stay green on lap number 104, but that could have been big for a lot of reasons.
It could have been huge, and the 15 machine did the smart decision, as you saw a couple of those looks there. Now we rejoin the view live as he's tucked in line behind the 46 at Clampett, so he ends up falling from 5th to 9th, but it was a very smart move by Novak to not try to rush that car back up onto the track, and you'll see those tire marks to the grass for the rest of this race. He just kind of cut it straight, slowed it down, and rejoined the racing surface in turn 1. Very good job, I would say, for how close of a call that was to catastrophe, to only end up losing those 4 positions and dropping it back to P9. Now, it's going to cost him a lot of time. That's going to be, I think, the thing that hurts the most, is he lost about 5 to 6 seconds of race time by dropping it back to those positions. So he'll certainly look to try to make it up. That's a couple of top running drivers that we've seen make some mistakes this evening that could be big when it comes to looking at that final running order by the time we get down to the end of this thing.
And especially with this thing having that green flag feel to it and could be going to the end, that 6 seconds could be very huge when it comes down to the end of that run. And not saying that could be the reason that Zach Novak might miss the playoffs by a couple of points, but you never know what could happen at the end of this one when everything is all said and done. And he's going to come down onto pit road and get service to that race car, and we should expect most of these drivers down here in the next few laps. 60 laps on fuel is probably the end all. That's probably the end of your tank. 60 laps. So once you get to lap 110, for those guys that are on that 55 lap strategy, you can go 60 laps or 58 laps to the end and be 1 or 2 laps to the good when you hit 167 at the end of this race. So the beds are made, per se. This is where we're going to see these drivers and these crew chiefs really make the money and see where the pay window does open here at the end of 167 laps. But Zach Novak is down and away on pit road. We'll see where that shakes him out. 107 on the board. That's going to be the end, per se, of his fuel window if he can go the rest of the way.
These drivers are certainly hoping that that's going to be their last trip down to the pit lane for this group, if you have to come back down, you've either got an issue or it means we have a late race restart due up and drivers are going to want tires. Because again, the tires are not very good here. As you see Ottinger come off for the pit lane and complete his service, I can promise you that if there is a late race yellow, you kind of have to throw any track position out the window. You will need tires, so it'll kind of balance everybody out. Ryan Luza down pit road. He was your race leader. He will surrender that spot to the 5 of Michael Conti, as Luza was very nice and clean, I would say, into the pit lane. He will come down for his service. Looks like Schoenberg continues to stay out, and we now start to see the drivers trickle down to the pit lane. The pit window's open for these cars. Final stop of the night. They'll have enough gas to get to the end.
55 lap runs for Team Conti. I would say that Brandon Hastings is going to haul Michael Conti onto pit road, and I would say Pat Millay is probably going to haul Brian Schoenberg onto pit road this lap as well. Here comes the 5 down onto pit road, and the 55 of Brian Schoenberg is working through corners number 3 and 4, and I'm sure he's getting the high sign from his crew chief Pat Millay, and they're going to bring that car down onto pit road and surrender the second place position. But there it is, 55 laps the first time, 55 laps the second time. We'll see if that number pays off for the double nickel of Brian Schoenberg after the great run that he's had so far this evening.
Colton Davis going to assume the race lead as Michael Conti has also come down to the pit lane, so Schoenberg not alone down there. Chris Shearburn also in pit road. You got Logan to clamp it down. Jimmy Mullis, another driver who's actively down on the pit lane, so it is the big swing of drivers, and it is right as we expected at lap 110. So all of these drivers will now rejoin the racetrack. You'll start to see that 2 of Ray Alfala cycle back to the front as the leader of that 3-stop strategy, with a pit stop still to come. Casey Kerwin assumes the race lead down with that bonus point in his back pocket after starting this one in 29th position. He leads for a moment at lap 112. Derek Bordeaux in second, hot on his heels. The battle for the race lead here through all of this. It is for position. The 04 going to go down low, and the 14 doesn't want to fight him that much for it. Derek Bordeaux to the race lead.
And looking back behind Bordeaux, Brad Davies is about 3/4 of a second or so behind. Ryan Lowe behind him will cycle, I believe, to position number 3 at this point. When you look back, there's Michael Guest coming on to pit road in the number 54 car. Watch for Ray Alfala to slide in here on your scoring loop near the front as well, because he was on that strategy of 40 or so laps on the first run to pit road, and currently being scored in position number 5 on the racetrack in the virtual racing school number 2, but he's being passed by the 46 of Logan Clampett right now as we see one more peel on to pit road to get service on their race car. So there's comers and goers here, but the guys that were on the early strategy still have one stop. If you are guys like Brian Schoenberg and Michael Conti, Nick Ottinger, Ryan Luza, your bed's made. This is what you have for the rest of the race. So now only one more chapter per se in this pit strategy book to play out here on this NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series round number 13.
The fun one so far. That onboard shot of Kerwin just showed you how aggressive these drivers are as they fight to get down pit road. More drivers coming in. Alex Bergeron down to the pit lane. It looks like Ryan Lowe also going to come down to the pit lane. So Ray Alfala has cycled up to position number 3. That fuel window is not very far on the horizon. We are within 10 laps now of seeing that group of drivers on the 3-stop call come down to the pit lane. So if Ray Alfala does cycle through to the race lead, he's still 5 seconds behind Bordeaux and Davies, who run 1-2. And again, Derek Bordeaux has done a fantastic job tonight of sticking with that 3-stop call, but going for the undercut just a tad bit, and it has put him in a great spot. He and Davies going to fight for the race lead and maybe have done enough work through that entire run to separate themselves enough from Alfala to kind of take over the catbird seat on that 3-stop call. This is a full-fledged battle for the race lead. The 13 winds it way up top. You go on aboard, but not to the inside. It's a lap 116 fight for the race lead. Brad Davies on the inside of Derek Bordeaux. Both of these cars started in the mid-teens in this race. They've gotten up to and past Ray Alfala through a lot of the smoke and mirrors on multiple different pit strategies, and now they are fighting for the right to P1 on their own. They'll have to deal with lap traffic. That's Clampett going by on the inside, not for position. It's only 04 and the 13, and Davies has to lift.
and Clampett's got better tires right now. The 13 of Brad Davies, one would think, okay, follow the 46 through, but hasn't been able to really get to the inside on those older tires, but now he'll try to set his sights back on that 04. There goes Blake Reynolds to the inside in the 66, and look at this run that Brad Davies gets out of corner number 2. Down to the inside he goes and tries to follow the 66 through. Got that run off the high side, but then again, Evan, no place to really put it, no place to really dig on the inside. The 13 caught the 04 with a head of steam. The 04 is going to get that run off corner number 4 and lead this race one more time, but I think Davies is going to have to get that run off the high side and do what he did right there. Just hope he gets the run, and there he's in the wall in corner number 2. Just barely scraped the wall ever so slightly, but that's going to kill that run into corner number 2.
And I'm amazed that Davies didn't lose any speed on that. He was so close to the wall, but barely grazed it, and he is favoring that outside line. As you can see him way up against the wall as you look at the back end of Bordeaux, who slices from the bottom to the top, and it about evens itself out as they head off into the quarter. It is challenging, though, to make a pass at the inside, and now Bordeaux going to swap lines. He sees the speed the 13's been able to carry. Still, he'll go to the outside of the racetrack, takes that line away, and it's been his best defensive move in a handful of laps. Is Rattler now, a lapped car, fresher tires, and on a different strategy, tries to navigate these waters and not interfere too much and be able to get on by them, but Bordeaux certainly taking out, and here comes Davies down to pit road. I was just about to suggest, Tim, that Ray Alfala 4.7 seconds back and on the same call as those guys might want to undercut them. He's not able to. Davies, the first to decide that it's time. He pits right now with 47 to go.
And this is where you're going to have to lay in the bed that you made on this run. And when you look at those guys that are on that 55-lap strategy, they have 10-lap older tires per se now compared to these guys that are now coming down into pit road. Derek Bordeaux is going to stick handle that thing onto pit road and slides that thing down onto pit road. He's from Quebec. I'm sure he's driven on ice before, and he'll come onto pit road and get service to that race car. The 2 of Ray Alfala on your screen. That is your leader, and right behind him is going to be Ryan Luza in car number 6, and there he is on the screen, about 9/10 of a second behind, and Ryan Luza poised to take the lead back from Ray Alfala here as we expect Alfala down on pit road within the next couple laps.
And this is big because you remember Ryan Luza headed down to the pit lane not all that long ago. The driver who started in P5 has been on that alternate strategy of the 2 stops. He had just pitted at lap 110, so no more than 15 laps ago. He is just now past Ray Alfala for the race lead, and the 6 is not coming down pit road at all more. He is done. He's completed his service, and he's good to the end. Alfala can't make it, so he's passed up the 2, and the 2 still has an entire trip down to the pit lane to go, which tells me that maybe that 2-stop call was the right one. Alfala, though, still not wanting to come down pit lane as he stays out again.
We mentioned 10 laps or so fresher tires for guys like Luza, like Conti. Ottinger came down pit road a little bit earlier than guys like Luza and Conti, but when you look at it, it's still 10 laps or 13 laps or whatever the case is going to be when Ray Alfala comes down onto pit road. He was kind of hoping, and I'm pretty sure right now he was hoping for a caution at some point here in this second stretch, and that's probably what he's hoping for right now is a caution, and he's going to forgo that. He's coming to pit road and slides that thing down onto pit road, gets it down to pit speed at 50 miles an hour, and he'll come down to the attention of his crew. So strategy per se I don't think worked out for Ray Alfala, but we'll see where guys like Alfala and Bordeaux will shake out on this long run and where they will finish in this one.
Even for a multi-time champion, you could always take some learning experiences. I think Ray will be fine as he heads into the playoffs next Tuesday as one of the top-seeded drivers as he completes his service here and will leave the pit lane at lap 125. So we are closing in on that 40-lap to go window. The pit lane, or the pit window, should say, is absolutely open now, as anybody who has yet to come down on that 3-stop call can, and they will be able to make it to the very end of this race as I think we officially enter the home stretch from Texas. This final portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Blue Def Diesel Exhaust Fluid, the #1 selling DEF in America. Caution-free, 127 laps. Ryan Luza in front, 3.7 seconds ahead of Michael Conti, who the last time by was not quick enough to catch him at all. The 6 in a great spot.
The 6 is in a good spot right now, 4 seconds up. As you mentioned, Conti's going to have to do some digging here in these next 41 laps to try to get up here and mount a charge. Nick Ottinger even further back in the hole, 9.3 seconds back from Ryan Luza as he enters corner number 3 and Luza comes out of corner number 4. Corey Vincent has scored in position number 4 right now, 12 seconds behind in the peak number 10 as he works out of corner number 4 and he'll slide that thing down onto pit road. So the 10 will surrender position number 4 to head down, and Christian Chalner on the racetrack in a position number 4. And there's that driver that needs to have a good run tonight, and he's been looking at guys like Matt Busa and Nick Ottinger and Michael Conti to get ahead of and make a challenge. Shelton a part of that as well. And when you're looking down the list, and obviously the pit strategy hasn't completely played out right now, Evan, but Nick Shelton, 23rd place. Christian Chalner in position number 4. If it were to stay that way, Christian Chalner would likely be in the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series playoffs, but we still have 39 laps to play this thing out. There's still a long ways to go.
And that's something as simple as the final spot or one of the final spots in the Championship 8. Could it be determined by which strategy decision you decided to pick on tonight? Because Challenger is certainly in a much better position right now, 4th, and Busa is down in 15th. Again, the unofficial points with the drop said that was just a 1-point difference, basically one spot on track before you factor in any bonus points that would have separated those two. So the 78 hoping that the final act of this race will as well play in his favor. If you've got anything else up your sleeve and you hope to fight for a championship this season, now is the time to let us know that you've got it. We'll take a very quick opportunity to step aside, and when we come back, we'll see who's able to execute final 40 laps underway in the regular season.
Things can get rough out there.
The bumper to the back of the 24!
You think you got the brass?
I proved it last season.
That was last year. Now we've got young blood ready to take out the old. Start your engines. It's time to race.
And we're back live from the Texas Motor Speedway, 132 laps in to 167 lap contest. It's round 13 of the 2018 NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing eSports Network. Happy that you're still with us. Evan Pocono, Tim Terry upstairs with you. And Tim, as we stepped aside, Christian Challenger was in an active position that would put him into the playoffs. No more, though. He has had to come down pit road to make that final stop, so he needs to get on the gas and catch Matt Busa. There's several other drivers in a very similar position as this caution-free race is about to come to its conclusion. Close it in on the final laps from Texas. Going to see if that 2 or 3 stop call is the right way to go. Ryan Luza is still your race leader.
And looking at where everything shakes out right now, Christian Chalner has fallen to position, I believe, 24, 25 right now, with Nick Shelton in position number 18. So still a lot to work out there when it comes to those final playoff positions. But up in front, Michael Conti has been able to chip in a little bit to Ryan Luza's lead. Michael Conti on your screen right now, battling with the O2 of Alex Bergeron, not a position, and Conti currently on the lead lap in position number 2, but he continues to be consistently faster by a tenth or so a lap, and he continues to work in on that gap. He's 3.4 seconds back. He's got 33 laps to get there, so you can do the math. Michael Conti at the end of the race, if simple math plays out and everything stays the same, would be there at the time of the caution or the checkered flag for Ryan Luza. So it could play out here. These top two are continuing to find each other as Michael Conti's still got a little ways to go though.
Yeah, but Conti has done a good job of turning it around. When they first blended back up onto the racetrack, Conti was on the receiving end of those negative intervals, and now he's kind of chipped back away to 3.2 seconds. Certainly, the 31 laps are going to be left to go this time by. Is enough for the 5 to make some noise, although you would have to keep up a consistent pace of at least a 1/10 of a second per lap. And that last time by, he gets just a few 100ths of a second. So that pace not going to be enough for Conti as they run right now. But again, those drivers good to the end. You have to look for Brad Davies in the 13. He would be the driver kind of leading this charge for the cars that have gone for the 3-stop strategy and those who have just recently come down pit road in the last 15 to 20 laps or so. He's the highest running of those cars. We've got the likes of Alfala tucked in behind him as well. But Brad Davies is P9. That sounds promising, but he's 23.9 seconds back. I don't care how fresh your tires are. That is a long way to go.
And looking at the last lap by, Ryan Luza this time by, or last time by was a 31.06. When you look at Brad Davies' last lap by, he'll come by, complete this lap here, and be a 30.73. So he's about 3/10 or so faster per lap on average, but obviously that's going to equal out a little bit as we go forward. Brad Davies has some speed, but I don't think he's going to have the speed enough to get there by the end of the race. Michael Conti has got the gap down to 2.8 seconds between himself and Ryan Luza, so it seems like when Michael Conti has a couple of decent laps, he'll whip off one that's a little bit quicker than Ryan Luza and close that gap by more than a 1/10 of a second. But as you mentioned, it's around a 1/10 of a second, give or take, that he's gaining every lap, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more. This time by, Michael Conti goes from 2.8 seconds to 2.6 seconds or so, so another 1/10 or so that's gained that lap by. So that's going to be quite interesting as we go on and see if the tires kind of equal out a little bit. Behind them, though, Nick Ottinger is still about 10 seconds or so behind in position number 3, and really no pressure from behind for at least a position. That's Chris Overland ahead of the 05 of Ottinger, not for a position. The next position back would be about 6 seconds or so behind him and Brian Schoenberg.
An interesting situation as well when you talk about the points involves that 15 of Zach Novak, who sits in 7th position right now. He came into this race 13 points behind the final spot in, or 12 points behind Challoner. Well, Challoner's pit stop has dropped him to 23rd. That is more than those 12 points he would need. So as they run right now, Novak would be about unofficially 9th in the points. The problem is he has to get one extra point away from Busa. Well, Busa runs in P12, so there is a chance that Zach Novak has closed a little bit tonight, but he would also again need to beat Busa by those 13 positions to therefore leapfrog him also. So Novak has done very well tonight up to P4. He is in a very good position, but it appears at the moment to not be enough, and there's a handful of drivers in that situation where they've come into this race and they've executed to a respectable amount, but it's, I think, the 12 weeks leading up to this that has put it a little bit too far out of reach. You can never say never. A lot may happen as we take 25 laps to go, but it is not looking good for several of those bubble drivers that we've been following all night.
I think the only one that might be in relative danger to Zach Novak compared to those guys on the good side of the bubble is Shelton, and he needs about 21 positions or so between himself, Novak, back to Shelton, and right now it's not enough. Shelton's running 18th place, one lap down as you see him on your screen, and Zach Novak is running in position number 8. So unless Zach Novak can pick up a bunch of positions here late, or Nick Shelton falls back a bunch of positions, I think that's the only one that's really in danger, and it's really not in danger right now when you look at it. So obviously Nick Ottinger and Michael Conti doing what they have to do and running up front and controlling their own destiny right now, and as long as they can keep those cars clean, they're likely going to come away with a playoff position. And when you look at Matt Busa, Busa is doing well himself, or doing at least what he has to do in position number 12 on the running order right now. So unless something changes over these next 23 laps or so, those top 8 that entered are likely going to be the top 8 that go into the playoffs, but we still have 23 laps to go in this thing.
And it's funny the way they run now, how much could change without changing anything. We made a big point of noting that, again, those points with the drop factored in said that Busa and Challoner were only 1 point apart from one another as they ran, and that was going to be the position to watch. However, it looks like that 6th, 7th, 8th, they might, all exchange positions with each other. It looks like Challoner and Novak might swap out some spots for 9th and 10th. So all of this position changing in the points right around that bubble, but nothing budging with that 1 point margin that it was coming into this evening. So that's certainly a unique perspective to look at on this one, as Zach Novak in a 15 machine now may have just had an issue. He drops the P28.
Yeah, I think he had a little bit of a connection issue on the racetrack, and he's fallen back 1 lap. So that's we just talked about everything that was going on with the points picture and what might happen and what might not happen. And by the looks of it, I think Novak might have just sealed his own destiny and controlled his own destiny per se there. Obviously not in his hands, but out of his hands at the same time. But nevertheless, up in front, Michael Conti continues to chip in, and Michael Conti's going to be there before the end of this race. He can see Ryan Luza in his windshield. He makes a pass on David Rattler, and the next car in front of him is the leader, Ryan Luza.
It looks like Novak had dropped out for a moment, but he didn't actually fall all the way out of the sim, so he appeared back on track, but he had lost that lap, but he's been gone for an extended period of time, and again, it didn't look like he had done enough. It would really be a heartbreak, no doubt, if you had done all this work to climb from the depths of some of those non-transfer spots into a top 8 position, and then for it to happen. Not that it's any consolation, you hate to have some sort of a connection problem play a factor in how this race ends, but the grand scheme of things, not the end of the world and not the deciding factor. If this does take Zach Novak out of this race, it just eliminates that 9th and 10th place drama that I was talking about, as Challoner kind of retakes that spot as he runs in 19th position. Again, that's not going to be enough for the 78, because he would then need to just beat Busa by 1 point. The Busa's got him on the racetrack right now by 8.
If Busa continues to do what he's doing, and I keep saying controls your own destiny, but that's essentially what he's doing right now. If he can continue to do what he's doing, he'll end up in the playoff picture at the end of this race in about 18 laps time, but there's a lot that could very well happen. The battle up in front is going to be between Luza and Conti. Everybody else has kind of fallen off the pace of those two up in front. Conti hasn't been to victory lane this season, looking to crack back into victory lane and really take the momentum into the playoffs. When you look at it last season, Michael Conti missed the playoffs by a little bit, had that great run at Sonoma, and it went all for naught early in that race. And he had some momentum going into the playoffs, but he was on the wrong side of the bubble, and now it looks like he's trending the same way, but he's going to be on the good side of the bubble. As Conti, you can see him work in that forefront Chevrolet. He's closing in on that number 6 of Ryan Luza. We're going to have a battle for the lead on our hands before this thing is all said and done, with 16 laps to go.
And he was able to hone things in. Again, we had watched those intervals, sometimes more than a 10th quicker, sometimes only a couple of thousandths, that he had to make up what was a 3-second deficit at about 30 laps. Easy math says you need at least a 10th per lap in that time to be able to close up and to be able to catch this one. If you do that, you're going to be there with ample time, and I think he'll catch him right at about that 10 lap to go window. Conti has found that little bit of consistency that he had been lacking, as he now gets set to mount a real charge on Luza for the race win in this one. Again, Luza, multiple wins this season from Fontana, from Las Vegas, and from Michigan. Conti was uncertain what kind of a race car he had coming into tonight. It could just be a race-winning one.
And when you look at it, about 20 or 25 laps ago, it was about 4 seconds, and Michael Conti was gaining about a 10th or so a lap and getting into that gap, and now it's manageable. Now you can see the 6 of Ryan Luza ahead of you by about 12 lengths or so, and then it gets a little bit closer. You start to see the writing. You start to see fast track sims on the TV panel of that race car in front of you. You just start honing in and focusing on that race car. Michael Conti is there, but we've seen it before. getting to him is one thing, making the move on him is a completely different ball game. But right now, it's just those two that are going for the lead. The next driver in line is 13 seconds behind in position number 3. So this is the battle. It's mano a mano between Ryan Luza and Michael Conti up in front.
And there are some other fronts on the racetrack. Brad Davies has been able to climb up to P6. Again, he leads the charge of the cars who took the 3-stop strategy. He could get up to Colton Davis, maybe even Brian Schoenberg, although he really made a big mistake that last lap, which isn't going to help him at all. So he might be able to claw as high as P4, but you're still looking at a deficit of nearly 20 seconds to the race leaders. So that decision to go for 2 stops was certainly by far, when you look at it at the end of the day, the right decision to make, although very easy to armchair quarterback it. There were points in this race where it looked like either strategy could play off, but that little bit more of a gamble, I would say, to run on the old tires, to have faith in this race going this amount of distance without an incident has really paid off. And we will see if Luza is going to be able to cap this one off, get a couple more bonus points headed into the playoffs, or if Michael Conti can get his first little bit of bonus points with his first win on 2018. He is once again, though, struggling with a little bit of that consistency. We caught him when he got up here, Tim, and he hasn't made any more progress. He's stuck right there at half a second.
But he's still got some laps to do it here this time by. They're going to come up to 10 laps remaining in this one. And Ryan Luza almost caught Casey Tucker at the wrong time. Michael Conti still has to make the move on the lap traffic, and that lap by, with going by the lap traffic, Ryan Luza just a wee bit quicker than Michael Conti. So Conti is going to have to dig deep. He dug deep to make up over 4 seconds, but now it's always that last little bit is the hardest to make up, and we're seeing it right now between those drivers up in front, and Michael Conti is going to have to work a little bit harder to get up here to the 6.
And to get that little bit extra lap machine as well, had been involved in this fight, and that's that 20 to Casey Tucker. He's in fact now the first car 1 lap down. Didn't really give Luza all that much of a headache, and you can see he'll go to the outside and give Conti as much space as he can, but Conti's only lost more time. That disadvantage now is a second between him and Luza. So maybe the late race push is not going to be meant to be, although Conti again came into tonight sweating, was one of those drivers who we talked about, only 8 points above the cutoff. It could have been a lot different of an evening. So while he may not get a chance to fight for the race lead, we'll find out now with 8 laps to go if he can pull something out of the hat. But certainly I think the joy and the elation of just being able to kind of close this one out with a very impressive performance will outweigh the disappointment maybe of not being able to fight for the race lead when you were oh so close to it. And I think Conti is going to have many more opportunities to go for these race wins now as he gets set to lock himself into the 5-race playoff.
But the race car drivers, it doesn't matter if you're racing the NASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series or the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. When the guys talked to Chase Elliott after the race at Bristol, he was disappointed because he didn't win the race because he had a fast race car. I'm sure Michael Conti is going to be a little bit disappointed, but he's also going to look forward towards the playoffs. He's going to have a little bit of momentum heading in towards the championship stretch on this season. But at the end of the day, Evan, the race car drivers, they all want to win, and especially when you come that close and you mount this hard of a charge towards the end, I'm sure Conti is going to have a little bit of disappointment as Ryan Luza that time by pulls away and pulls away again. It's now 1.3 seconds. Michael Conti got close enough that he could sniff the lead, and now it's walking away from him in the late laps.
There's no threat from behind, though. 15 seconds out the back end is where Nick Ottinger is from third. So maybe take a deep breath and just try to close this one out. A big milestone on the horizon for Ryan Luza. He'll complete lap 162 this time by, and he will take 5 laps left to go for the Texas Motor Speedway. One more lap, and it means that if a caution flag were to even come out, this race would not restart. And assuming that it's not the 6 who has the problem, it would be a pace speed to the end for Luza. So it's a big milestone if he can close out this lap. That's another thing that he can dodge, and he'll be officially able to kind of run this one out to the end. The question all night, the preface was, A, what strategy is going to work, and B, does this race go green long enough for the strategy to play out on its own? The answer is going to be yes. There's only 4 laps to go.
But did you see Derek Bordeaux coming off of corner number 4 there battling with Casey Kerwin? That was almost the caution flag that came out, but they got that thing sorted out, and we're going to stay green. And the one thing that you saw there, Ryan Luza, just behind him, you had Keegan Leahy, and there's another driver that was so quick at the start of the night, had that pit road penalty. What might have been? He's going to finish 3 laps down and probably about 29th or 30th place. So that's going to be the heartbreak for Keegan Leahy. And when you look at it, Keegan came in with 3 wins. Ryan Luza came into this round with 3 wins, and it looks like unless something happens here in the late stages, Ryan Luza is going to come out with a 4th victory on this season. But anything can happen here in these waning laps.
You never know. There's always some cars that you're going to catch up to. Luza's closed in on the back bumper to Jimmy Mullis, who runs right now in 31st, and it kind of looks like he doesn't want to get up alongside the 27 and pass him. Just don't risk putting yourself in a vulnerable position when you do not need to. Conti has dropped way off, and just kind of looking at the lap times, it is certainly Conti who has lost speed rather than Luza who has gained speed. Conti went from the 31.1s to the 31.3s very quickly, so he really ate up that race car. Luza's been pretty consistent at the 31.2s and 3s. It was a 31.4 the last time by, so Luza going for the consistency to the end. It was Conti who drops off late as we look for the white flag.
Yeah, look at the white flag this time by Ryan Luza. Will have one more lap to finish this one. But Ryan Luza, he put on a show here tonight. As long as he can come back here, he'll walk away with his 4th win of the season. And how about momentum heading into the playoffs?
Going to give him a lot of momentum. It's also going to be, as you noted, a 4th win on the season. That'll be the most out of any driver on this 2018 NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series. The benefit of that is he'll have the most bonus points out of anybody as the playoffs get set to start next Tuesday. Final time off of quarter number 4. It's 4th on the season. Ryan Luza wins from Texas and closes out the regular season in style.
And becomes the 8th different winner at the Texas Motor Speedway in this NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series. Great job by that number 6 team. Conti at the end came so close within the final 15 laps to being able to sniff a win, but he's going to come home in position number 2. Ottinger, a strong run in 3rd. Colton Davis is going to come home 4th, and Brian Schoenberg is going to come home in position number 5. Not sure what happened to Brad Davies at the end, Evan, but he's going to slide back to position number 9. Shearburn, Alfala, and Kerwin get by him late.
He was really struggling on some of those late laps, and I don't know if he had gotten into the outside wall. He had gotten up to P4, as we noted. He drops 5 late in this race. Don't think it's going to be a determining factor for him as far as obviously the overall scheme of things. Not one of the drivers fighting for that championship spot, but a tough break for him late. It is not a tough go, though, for Ryan Luza. Statement here tonight as he breaks the deadlock with 3 wins on the season that headed into this evening. He shared with another driver for the most wins on the season. He now breaks out in front of Keegan Leahy with 4, and those will be your top 2 drivers headed into the start of the playoffs next Tuesday night. And to take his victory lap in celebration, Luza once again going to be a big focus of a NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series championship fight as he's locked himself in 2018.
And looking at that playoff picture, we're going to have to wait for the official word, but I think those 8 that we had coming in are going to be the 8 that we have going out when it comes to the championship picture. Christian Chalner needed to do what he had to do, finish 17th, 1 lap down, and Nick Shelton came in 9 points to the good, and he's going to finish back in position number 20. So I think, I'm not very good at math, Evan, but I think those 8 that came in are probably going to be the 8 that are going out that are going to battle for the playoffs beginning next week.
It looks like that is going to be the case. Again, the points with the drops that we had got off were technically unofficial. Fairly confident in the numbers. So we will wait for the official word as Luza does a second set of burnouts. But we do believe that those 8 drivers who came into tonight above the cut line will be your 8 drivers to fight for a championship. We'll confirm that as soon as we get word from Race Control. One thing we can tell you is a look top to bottom at tonight's race results here in RaceSpot TV full race rundown. Ryan Luza Busa takes home win number 4 on the season for him, and that Phenom Racing Team number 6 entry takes the win on top of Michael Conti, who comes home 3rd. You can see the big separation between the top 2 and everybody else. Ottinger 3rd, Colton Davis 4th, and Brian Schoenberg in 5th. We hope to be trackside with all of those drivers in just a moment. Chris Schubert comes home in 6th position tonight. Ray Alfala's strategy good enough for a P7. I believe he ends up as the highest finishing driver who made those 3 trips down to the pit lane. Casey Kerwin behind Tim in 8th. Brad Davies, as we mentioned, a late slide to P9, and Derek Bordeaux rounds out your top 10.
And when you look at the second page, you see a couple of drivers that are on the lead lap. Logan Clampett, Ryan Lowe, and Matt Busa. They are all on the lead lap. At the end of it, 1 lap down was Casey Tucker. Michael Guest in 15th. Chris Overland had a good run tonight. He's going to finish in 16th place. Christian Chalner 17th. Alex Bergeron 18th. Corey Vincent in 19th. And Nick Shelton complete your top 20.
7 more drivers on the screen now who finished the lap down, 21st through 27th. That includes Brandon Kripras at the top of that group. 22nd is Bobby Zelensky. Andrew Fayash, the 3rd, comes 23rd. You got Taylor Hurst, Marcus Richardson, and Phil Diaz through 26th spot. Adam Gilliland is 27th, and that final driver to finish down 1 lap. 2 laps down for David Rattler in 28th position. 3 laps down for both Keegan Leahy, 29th, and Blake Reynolds in 30th. And then all the way at the back, Jimmy Mullis comes home 31st. Zach Novak comes home 32nd, and Joe Letteriello never officially retired from this race, so all with the exception of Zach Novak, who disconnected from the session late in the going. We did not have any drivers that went behind the wall and retired from this race from an incident. This one, green flag start to finish from Fort Worth, Texas. What we'll do is take one final opportunity to step aside, and when we come back to the Texas Motor Speedway, we'll go trackside, talk with your top finishers, and we'll talk playoffs. 13 races down, 5 to go. The post-race show is next. You're watching the iRacing eSports Network.
Section PU 402, row 41.
Jimmy Johnson, the fastest gun in the West.
Section 104, row 4.
Blaney out of the first win.
Section 25, row 3.
What a year for Bubba.
Section O, row 25.
Keselowski's gonna win Talladega.
Section 156, row 4.
Kurt Busch to the lead on the backstretch.
Section 233, row 1.
Martin Truex Jr. wins.
You get a seat, but we doubt you'll ever use it. Grab your seats at NASCAR.com/tickets today.
So what are you afraid of? Those feelings are made up. For anyone asking who is the best, we putting our hands up.
4 more kilometers. Oh, there we go! They caught!
This time, like the last time, I'm moving so fast, I'm ready to ride.
Wonky! Down to the inside of Hoosie's off!
Ottinger throws the block, and he will keep him behind him.
My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Turning the track up. I'll never go back down. Hands over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
We're back live from the Texas Motor Speedway. You're taking a look at the finishing results for the 13th race of the 2018 NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series. Also marking now the end of the regular season, as from this point on, it gets serious. The playoffs start next Tuesday right here on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing eSports Network. Happy that you're still with us for the RaceSpot TV post-race show. Evan Pasoko, Tim Terry still with you. We'll go trackside in just a moment and talk with your top finishers. Tim, certainly a very different kind of race that we saw here tonight than if it would have been as scheduled at Bristol Motor Speedway, but I've got no complaints at all. You mentioned Texas, a staple marker on this calendar, back again, and it did not disappoint. We saw a great race that went without incident through 250 miles.
And an 8th different winner at this joint as well. And Ryan Luza had to earn it late in the race, pulling away from Michael Conti and sealing up his 4th victory of the season. Excited to hear what he has to say heading into the playoffs coming up next week.
We'll go trackside right now with the driver of the number 6 machine. It is Ryan Luza, who is your race winner from the Texas Motor Speedway. Marks the 4th for him on 2018. Ryan, congratulations on the win. Our topic of conversation tonight was obviously in and around the bubble, and while you guys weren't technically locked in, 20 points above the cut line with the drops factored in was certainly a lot more comfortable than a lot of drivers were. You didn't need the win, but I'm sure you'll take those extra bonus points headed into next week. Congratulations again. Just talk us through the evening.
Yeah, the plan was to just come in and be careful. If I had to run 5th to 10th, whatever, just be as careful as I could. But once again, we're just really, really fast on the long run, and worked our way to the front as the run went. And since the car wasn't really falling off after, because we planned on pitting at 40, I believe, and the car just kind of stopped falling off, so I decided to go for the 2-pit call, and that was ultimately the winning call. If I pitted on 40, I'd have had no chance. But the car was super fast towards the end, and actually I got faster from lap 30. I was probably faster on 50 than I was then. So just a crazy car. It was super loose. The track was very, very slick. Super hard to drive. I'm hurting still, but had a lot of fun. Conti was really, really fast, but typically towards the end of those runs, I ended up putting time on him, so I wasn't too terribly worried.
Obviously, you mentioned the difference in the strategies. It was pretty much the primary decision maker as far as who's able to fight for the race win here tonight and who wasn't, because of the fact that this thing did go green top to bottom. Did you consider at the start to at all, consider that 2-stop strategy, thinking that this race could go green all the way, and if you get those longer runs, each stint going about 55 or so compared to the 40, that would play into your wheelhouse, or was it really that kind of complete decision on the fly there to switch it up? Because it certainly looked like early that most drivers were going to go with the 40s, and then all of a sudden you get to the middle portion of this race, you guys are sitting pretty good. Obviously you made the right call, but obviously the green flag racing as well factored into that. But did you give any weight to the 2-stopper before you made the decision on the fly, or did you start pretty committed to the 3 and then change your mind during the race?
I think we were maybe loosely committed to the 3-stop, but we were just talking about the possibilities, as we were doing our warm-up lap. We're talking about, obviously we could go 41s, and then Chris speaks up and asks how many we'd have to go if we needed to stop, to know if we can make it on fuel. And we needed to go 55, 56, and that was a big thunder. That was fine on fuel, so in the back of my head, you're just thinking about that. Because on this build, typically the cars have really kind of evened off once you fall off really quickly, and then you get to a point where you just kind of stay there. And I was thinking if that happened again at Texas, that's what we would do. I wasn't really expecting to, though, either, because of how loose the cars got. I thought we were really going to fall off. But the car just got so loose, actually, it was able to pin the bottom really well, and just went with that call, and luckily we made the right call.
It certainly works out for you, and you're not going to get much of a break or an opportunity to reset, because unlike most weeks throughout the year, there is no off week this time around as we head right off into the playoffs. Congratulations to you and the team for being able to qualify in through those top 8 positions in 2018 and to get set to go through the routine once more. You know the racetracks, you know how it works out. In the past, you guys have been able to obviously hone things in these last handful of weeks. It all starts at Darlington next week. The fact that you got more race wins than anybody else this season, the fact that you'll start with more bonus points than anybody else headed into next week also, where do you feel like that sets you up to make a charge for the title?
I don't know. The plan, the easiest thing or the best thing to happen, obviously, is win Darlington and kind of start working on Homestead. But that's obviously the best case scenario. If we can't do that, you just gotta stay focused and try to ring off those top 5s. There's a top 8. I'm not exactly sure who's in, but they're all really fast, and it's pretty much just a toss-up to whoever makes the top 4 now. If you have one bad race, you have to win to get in, is what I think. So either you're consistent for all 4, or if you get unlucky or something goes crazy, you have to win. So I know we're going to wait and see how that goes, but we got to put a lot of effort into Darlington, and I think Darlington's one of my better tracks, but it's super hard to pass, so you have to set yourself up well, qualify well at Darlington, and keep that track position.
We're also awaiting that official word, but it looks like top 8 into tonight should be the top 8 headed into the playoffs. Again, unofficially, but it would be yourself, Zelensky, Leahy, Alfalo with Shelton, Conti, Ottinger, and Busa. We're waiting to confirm that, but the whispers are obviously, and I'm sure you've heard them, that you head into this thing as one of the favorites. You look at those names, who do you think is going to be there in those top 4 if you're able to make it alongside them? Who are the drivers you're eyeing based on how they perform this season and based on the tracks that are coming up that you think are going to be right there alongside with you?
Obviously, my teammate Keegan. Keegan's going to be super, super tough. Conti, I think, has been really fast, probably one of the fastest cars in the last half of this year, so he's going to be carrying that. And I know he's has a bad taste in his mouth from last year, missing the chase by just a little bit. So I think me, Keegan, Conti, and I think that's my main 3. Keegan's going to be super hard, and Conti's going to be super fast, and obviously can't leave out Ray. So I think if I had to put my money down, that's our top 4 going into Homestead.
We look forward to seeing how this thing plays out over the next 5 weeks and really the next handful of months. But we'll let you jet out of here and catch a break. I know you only had about 2 sets of 15-second stops on pit road to stretch out. It was a long race, and we always appreciate your time here trackside with us, Ryan. Before we let you go, though, the sponsors and the shout-outs who has made these opening 13 weeks so good and who's going to power you through these final 5.
Thanks to everybody at Phenom Racing Team. Shearburn and Keegan Leahy put in a ton of work. So just huge thanks to them. Wouldn't be where I am right now, especially missing those races without their help. So huge thanks to them, everybody at Phenom, Derek Bordeaux, Andrew Fayash. Thanks to Fast Track Sims for staying on board again. Just hoping we have a good chase. That's really all it comes down to. Just gotta not make a mistake in the chase races or just grab a win. So definitely going to be exciting. Thanks to everybody along the way.
The playoffs start next Tuesday, and he is going to begin it. It's your race winner tonight from Texas Motor Speedway, Ryan Luza, for the 4th time on 2018. Ryan, thanks for sticking around and chatting with us. Again, congratulations on what you guys have been able to do, and best of luck headed into next week. We'll catch you at Darlington, and hopefully we'll have a chance to chat there.
Thanks, Evan. Hopefully so.
Was Ryan Luza, who comes out on top tonight. An impressive season continues. It is only one step, though, as it really gets serious in 1 week's time. Michael Conti also came into tonight in a little bit of a tricky spot in the points, not guaranteed, but he pulls out the result that he needed. He'll also be fighting for a championship, and he's trackside with Tim Terry.
He controlled his own destiny coming into this one, and Michael Conti comes home with position number 2. But, Mike, I know you wanted that win. You got there within 15 laps to go. What happened to the thing? Did it just cliff off at the end?
Yeah, pretty much. We got the car better throughout the night. The first run, it cliffed pretty bad early on, and I couldn't go full throttle down the straightaway, so it was not good. But made some pretty good adjustments, was really good the second run, ran Luza down before the stops, pitted a lap after him, kind of shook out behind, and I did not think I'd get that close to him. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. If I could have gotten around the O2 a little bit easier, maybe I could have gotten a little bit closer to him. But either way, he was really good. After 40, 45 laps, he could just gap me, but I was better in the middle of the run for like 20 laps or so. But overall, to get that close to him and Keegan and those guys after we've been just struggling to figure out the speed this year on the big tracks, that's pretty positive, and we're really proud of the effort. Busa and Ottinger, they put a lot of effort into it this week, so thanks to them. Brian came home with a good finish, which was fantastic. So it was just good to get some Chaos Crew cars up front. Good to get this main performance PC forefront car up front like it deserves. We've had some ups and downs this year, but tonight was good, and hopefully we can keep this going next week at Darlington.
We mentioned Brandon Hastings is on the road, your regular crew chief. How tough was it for him to call the audible from the road?
I mean, this is how dedicated he is. I mean, he works for Penske, and he's at a test in Homestead, and he's still on the laptop and the phone running fuel numbers and figuring out strategies. I mean, the guy is just the best crew chief, engineer, strategist you could ask for on this thing, and I wouldn't rather have anybody but him. We've been through a lot of good and a lot of bad, and we've come out on the other end in pretty good shape. So he was the one that decided to do the longer stints there and cut a pit stop out, and that's what ultimately got us to that top 5 very easily, too. I mean, there's really no pressure at the end. The only pressure was what I put on myself to try to get to Lusa, but either way, I mean, if we could do this well here, we can do well at Darlington. To be completely honest with you, Tim, I didn't think we would have anything for the top 4 the way we've been running the last couple weeks here. The last couple times we went to bigger tracks, so to beat Ray, to beat Shelton, to beat a lot of these guys, to beat Keegan too, it gives us some hope that we can actually advance in this thing and have a shot when we get to Homestead. Richmond, they put a lot into this thing. Mike Waddell and those guys that got this thing off the ground, they put a lot into it, and they've got 2 cars in the championship running, so not all of the cars, but 2 still pretty good. So Nick and I are going to do the best we can for them, and hopefully get those guys up front and maybe a championship.
Now, before we let you go, Ryan Lusa said the same thing in his interview. You're coming in with a boatload of momentum. Same thing you did last year, only you're on the right side of the inch this time. You're in the playoffs. He picked you as one of the 4 to watch going into Homestead. You'll be there at that final race. Let us hear your top 4. Who is going to be battling for that championship at Homestead? Obviously, this 5 car is going to be there. Who else do you see as the other 3 that could potentially be joining you when we talk about the championship?
For sure. I'd like to think I'll be in there if I cannot make a bunch of stupid mistakes like I have made the last couple weeks on pit road. 5 car is definitely going to be there. Hoping that Nick can be there alongside of us. 5 and 05 in the Final 4 would be fantastic for the team and the sponsors and just everybody that put this thing together. But I do think the other 2 probably going to be Ray and Lusa. I think Keegan's going to be right there. I think he's going to be in it if he can be consistent. Tonight he was a little bit off. He's made some mistakes throughout the year, and I mean this is his first year and he's already doing this well. So he's going to make mistakes, but he's going to have to minimize them to get into the Final 4. But it's going to be tight. I mean, you got 8 really good cars this year. I think last year there was a separation between like the fastest 6 and the bottom 2. I think this year you've got 8 cars that are now all legitimate contenders to make the Final 4. So it's going to be very interesting. We've got unique tracks coming up. You got Darlington, Indy, a bunch of different places that really don't mirror one another. So who knows? It's going to be exciting. The racing has been fantastic the last couple weeks. Everybody's kept it clean and green and pretty respectful, so appreciate that. We'll see what happens, but it's been a good first year for the Chaos Crew. We've got 2 cars in the championship. We got 4 front there. We got 5 somewhat to the forefront, not totally there, but we're going to get there hopefully. And yeah, it was an intense race. I'm pretty pooped, and hopefully Darlington is just as good for us.
Well, there's Michael Conti coming home in position number 2. Mike, congratulations, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Tim.
And now, Evan, I believe you caught up with our 3rd place finisher. Another great run this season for Nick Ottinger coming home in that 3rd place spot.
And it was an identical night for him, just about as we saw to Michael Conti. Nick Ottinger comes into this race 7th in the points, only 8 above the cut line, and he gets a great result, the P3, going to launch the 05 into the 2018 playoffs. Nick, congratulations on the solid result. You kind of followed Mike through the field here tonight, started right behind him, finished right behind him. Great nights for both of you guys, and it seems like that the agreements on the strategy, well, he had a little bit more bite there and was able to challenge Lusa at the end. Well, you were kind of able to coast all on your lonesome in 3rd, fighting behind you, fighting in front of you. Looks like it all works out in the end.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We had a strong car tonight for sure. Team Connie, Mike Connie and Brian Schoenberg done a lot of help for long run testing this week, and Boosa done a lot of testing for just to get some speed in the long run, and I think it's shown. I mean, we finally been running up front where we should be, and Mikey had a little contention to get the loser. I think his car got a little tired at the end of the runs, but I mean that was to be expected. They've been setting stellar long run pace, and we had a little hiccup, I'd say, the first stop where we just had to save fuel from there. Holden had us on what we thought was a really good strategy. We took a little less fuel for second run, but we ended up having to save about 7 laps of fuel that second run and just lost touch with Luza and Mike. I mean, a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda, maybe could have contended with them two up front, but I mean, we just rode around by ourselves in the 05 Richmond Toyota Camry, and I mean, we didn't really have no pressure. Just stayed exactly from the first stop all the way to the checker flag.
If the rules for the regular season were the same as what this opening round of the playoffs are going to be, then your season would have been a lot more relaxing as you guys were able to pick up that win right off of the bat at Daytona International Speedway. Instead, you have to fight and claw all the way through this season. That win will give you a small boost as we head into the playoffs beginning next week. But what has this season been like for you guys to have to fight for it and kind of get every little thing you could out of every single week to be able to lock this one up at the very end?
Yeah, I mean, for sure it's been a grind. I mean, it was good for our alliance running good at Daytona, but I mean, our performance since then has been pretty much lackluster until the last few weeks. I mean, personally, I've had a lot of 8th place finishes this year. That's helped me out, but I mean, I think we're on the up from showing tonight. I mean, a lot of the 1.5-mile intermediate tracks, we've really not had that top 5, top 4 speed throughout a whole run. I mean, it'll show up probably about 5-10 laps through a run, but tonight, I mean, it's shown. So, I mean, it's just a testament to how hard we've worked to actually get back to running up front. And, I mean, I expect us to at least be able to contend. I hope Mikey can keep performing well. I mean, he drove really good tonight, and I think he's going to be a contender with Luza, Keegan, and Ray. I mean, it'll be pretty close for that final Homestead race.
If nobody of those championship drivers finds victory lane in the next few weeks, you guys would be able to take a bunch of these P3 finishes in advance, but history would tell us that some drivers are going to be able to pull through. So having been on the up and up, as you say, in these last couple of weeks, do you think that 05 has what it takes to leap those extra few spots that you've been able to pick up here in these last few weeks and get to victory lane to kind of raise some hell with these guys as we head to Darlington, Indy, Atlanta, and Dover?
Yeah, I think we can. I mean, we just have to put the same amount of work we did tonight and all this week preparing. I mean, it's going to be a tall task beating Luza and Keegan. I mean, they've been top of their game since the drop of the green flag at Daytona, and they haven't let up. I mean, I think it's just a testament how hard our Chaos crew, teammates with Mike Connie, Brian Schoenberg, and my actual teammate of Matt Busa have worked. I mean, Busa might have a real shot to transfer as well. He's been running really good this season, so I mean, he could break through for his first win, and he's been deserving to have a win in his career. But I expect to see the usual players up front with Keegan and Luza and Ray.
We'll let you get out of here. I know you guys got a week long of prep. You don't get those the usual 2 weeks to get set for this one. We're back at it next Tuesday from the track Too Tough to Tame. But Nick, it's a great result for you guys tonight and a step in the right direction. You're fighting for the 2018 championship beginning next week. And who makes it happen for you?
I think it's, Mikey said it, Richmond Raceway, the Chaos crew. I mean, Mike Waddell for really reaching out and putting together such a nice deal. Federated Auto Parts 400. I mean, I don't think we'll get the chance to actually go there to watch them for their playoff race. But I mean, they brought us earlier this year, and it was a really good meeting for a lot of us for the Chaos crew. So hopefully, you'll see us up front and contend in these next couple races.
He's your P3 finisher tonight, and he is one of the Championship 8. That is Nick Ottinger. Nick, we appreciate your time post-race. Again, congratulations. Best of luck to you and the team, though, headed into next week. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
He comes home at a P3, going to be good enough, and to move away from some of those championship names that we had been talking about, it's Colton Davis, who has a great result tonight, picks up 12 spots to come home in the top 5. Tim Terry's trackside with your P4 finisher.
Yeah, it's about time we got to talk to Colton Davis. Let's talk about a run at the Texas Motor Speedway. Started in 16th, finished in 4th. Let's fill in the gap there.
Yeah, I didn't get a great qualifying effort, as you saw, but that first run, I just was a ping pong ball. I couldn't catch a break to save my life. But that second run, I got it together, and I just started working up. It helped that everyone decided, not everyone, but most people decided to go on a different strategy than I was. So that helped me in the positions, for sure. And then that last run, I had to...
Well, the first year in this series is been a little difficult, but coming home with a top 5 finish in this one, Colton, how excited and relieving is this to finally get a top 5 run here?
You know, it's great. I've been working towards this all season just to try and keep my license, and it's nice to finally put our entire race together.
So we've been talking to these championship contenders. You're on the outside of that mark before the drops factored in your 23rd in points. For these final 5 races, what is the goal for you?
I'm just trying to get inside the top 20 so I don't have to run the Pro Series this season, or this winter, and try and make the most of it.
Looking at those final 5, obviously you're trying to lock yourself into that top 20, but where do we see in those final 5 races that we could see this number 11 in victory lane? Does it come next week at Darlington?
I think that's my best chance because Darlington is by far my best track.
You've come to the racetrack with some beautiful looking race cars. Who's on the side of this race car? Who helps you get to the racetrack every week?
First off, I have to thank Brian Lowe and Houston Hammer for putting in all the work that they do, and Nathan Lyon. And then everyone at Dead Zone and Nexus, they help a lot.
And there's Colton Davis. Watch for him in these final 5 races to try to get up here and possibly win one. Finishes in 4th, first top 5 of the season at the Texas Motor Speedway. We'll see you next week.
See ya. Thank you.
And we'll move on to position number 5. And I've been waiting to talk to this guy all season long, post-race. It's great to have Brian Schoenberg in the top 5 after this one. And we'll get Brian on the horn here and get him hooked up to talk post-race with the RaceSpot crew. There's Brian Schoenberg. I've been waiting for this for a little while.
Hey, Tim.
Let's talk about a top 5 run here at Texas. This thing was lights out all night long. It seemed like it was in top 10 all night.
Well, I'll tell you the secret, Tim. I saw that Ray Alfalla picked me in fantasy, so I knew we had to run good tonight for him not to let him down. But really, this Team Conti has been really beat down. Us and our corporate teammates Nick Ottinger and Matt Busa, we've been struggling all year. And, you know, first off, congrats to all 3 of them for making the playoffs. I'm quite a bit under there, which is unfortunate, but my goal is to stay in the top 20 in points, obviously. So we had a good night for that. But we've been beat to the ground a lot, and these guys worked very, very, very hard. And I'm glad to see us all get, you know, good finish out of it for once. Definitely really proud of them. And I'll tell you what, Tim, for anybody out there that stereotypes, you know, this whole sim racing thing, you know, thinking it's just a bunch of, you know, mid-20s or younger age kids, or you know, even in my case, an older guy driving around one-handed with a beer can in the other hand. I'll tell you what, this was nothing like that today. It was really hard to drive, and luckily our cars were able to drive just a little bit better than pretty much almost everybody. So it was an amazing time.
So you mentioned trying to lock yourself into this series next year. Without that drop factored in, it looks like you're 15th in the point standing. So you're on the good side of that. Let's talk about these final 5 races. Obviously, you're not in that playoff picture, but you've got some things to fight for. Where do we see you putting this 55 car in victory lane? Because it seems like this team is really gelling right now.
I don't know about Victory Lane, but I'll tell you what, we're going to Darlington next week, one of my best tracks. We got a top 5 there last year, so hopefully we can run like we did tonight next week and gain a lot of points there. 2 of my better tracks, Tim, Pocono, New Hampshire, did not go well at all for us, so I'm hoping the Lady in Black will be really nice to us next week. And I got to tell you, I'm really proud and happy as well for my crew chief, Patrick Ballet. He did a great job all race, giving me information to guys on new tires and everything. I was just running low and slow, all race. And when you're out there on old tires and you have people coming by you going 20 miles an hour quicker, it's really intense. So I got to thank Patrick Mallet for doing a great job crew chiefing and spotting. And good old Brandon Hastings had a really good pit strategy he gave us before the start of the race, and it just worked out, to the T. So, I mean, it's a really great effort, and, I'm happy my other 3 guys are in the chase, and I know they're going to be working really hard, and I'm glad to be along for the ride with them.
You've been around this since year number 1 with this NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing series. You know these guys in this series in and out. You mentioned those 3 guys that you're rooting for the championship. Give us a championship 4 prediction. Who's going to be battling for it at Homestead?
Let's see. Obviously, you got to go with Luza. You got to go with Keegan. I don't know what was going on with him, but I passed him like on lap 40 in the race tonight, and I felt like the world was, turned upside down. So that was funny. So sorry. I'll go with let's go with that. Let's go with Luza, Keegan. Let's go with Ray, and then let's go with Conti for the final 4. But really, Nick Ottinger and Matt Busa have really been bringing it on lately too. So you never know what's going to happen, but. A lot of happy people on our team right now, so it's good. It's really good.
Heyman Hustle, Chaos Crew on the side of this race car. Who else makes it happen for you?
Okay, so we got those 2 right there. Heyman Hustle, Chaos Crew, looking for Larry. We may have found him tonight. Kicker Audio, and obviously just Richmond Raceway and everyone over there. Haven't really had a lot of good runs for them to really cheer about, at least in my car's sake, but glad to get them a good one tonight with a lot of other people on that team. So it was just a really good night overall, and really getting down, on myself lately. We've had a ton of tough races in here, and we haven't really run that good. And I go into NIS fixed or something and run good there, and it brings your confidence up. So it was nice to run good in this series, an open setup and get things going. I mean, you really had to drive the cars hard tonight, especially, caution free, no brakes or anything. It was a tough night, but it's so darn rewarding too, though, when you're able to make something good happen like this tonight. So just thank them and thank the fans and everyone picked me in fantasy. It was a good one. Thank you, Tim.
It's a great night when Brian Schoenberg's in the top 5, and I'm sure we'll see the 55 in the top 5 before this thing is all said and done, these final 5 races, Evan. And now Brian can kick back, as he mentioned, with the 1 beer in his hand and enjoy a night before the business gets down to it with these playoff races upcoming.
And just to hammer down the point again, they don't get a week off. If you think there'd be one spot on the calendar where you get an opportunity to kind of reset and clear your head, it would be in between, the end of the regular season and the playoffs, but that's not going to be the case. You've got it every other time from this point to the end of the season, but just the way the calendar works out is it is next week on the 28th where we go racing at Darlington and start with this championship. But tonight's race, a ton of fun. I know we talked about, what kind of a race we would expect from Texas with the late change on the schedule, and as I said when we came back for the post-race show, not at all disappointed with the results. I think that you can only take away good things when you put these guys out on the racetrack. It goes green flag at top to bottom. May not have had the fireworks late in this one that we may have expected when I told you that the gap between 8th and 9th in the points was just 1 point. Again, we are fairly confident that it is the 8 drivers who came into tonight above the cut line that are your 8 playoff drivers. If anything changes, we'll let you know on RaceSpot TV. Follow us on Twitter on RaceSpot TV if anything does change, Tim. But we've got an idea of who our championship drivers are. We've got a pretty good idea based on how they've done all season on who the favorites are. It's time to quit speculating, and it gets real next week.
And you've got 8 really good race car drivers there that are going to go for that championship. Obviously, Keegan Leahy had an off night per se, but he had some points to fall back on. You always have a bad run at some point throughout the year. Ray Alfala started off the night really hot and came home with a top 10 finish. And for the most part, these drivers are coming into the playoffs starting next week with a lot of momentum. Darlington is going to be interesting to watch and see how those 8 drivers do. If they do what they did tonight, we're probably going to see a lot of them up in the top 15 going to try to lock themselves into Homestead Miami Speedway. Can't wait to see who comes out of this one, and I don't think those top 5 drivers post-race, pick your top 4. I don't think we had anybody with the same top 4. So that's what's going to make this thing so exciting. It's so competitive going into these final 5.
It really is, and the tracks are going to be a big factor in that one. A lot of unique racetracks. Atlanta, really the only normal track at the 1.5 miler. Darlington, Indy, Dover, the other one's certainly going to be fun. Again, unofficially, it'll be Ray Alfalla, Keegan Leahy, Bobby Zelensky, Ryan Luza, Nicholas Shelton, Michael Conti, Nick Ottinger, and Matt Busa fighting for the 2018 championship. That being said, round number 13 and the regular season now falls into our rear view mirror. We want to thank all of the people who have made all season these broadcasts possible and will continue to bring RaceSpot TV to you through the rest of the playoffs. East Van Ballo for the cameras, Simon Grossman, Kevin Papey, their team for broadcast CG, of course, Andy Werder on the graphics, for Will Vincent, Hugo Luis, Drew Adamson, Cisco Scaramouze, everybody else behind the scenes here at RaceSpot and on iRacing, and of course for your broadcast team tonight. For myself, Evan Pasoko, for Tim Terry, want to thank all of you for tuning in and congratulate Mr. Ryan Michael Luza. He takes the win, his 4th on the season, and as everybody else resets, he'll lead into the playoffs that begin just next week as we head into that 5-race playoff for the championship. We know the 8 drivers who will fight for the title, some looking for their first and others maybe looking for a second and then some. The good news is, though, we get right into the action again next Tuesday, August the 28th for the Darlington Raceway for round 14 on the season and the opening round of the playoffs. That race and every single race on the road to the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series Championship can be found right here on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing eSports Network. Until next time, good night from Texas. We'll catch you in the playoffs from Darlington.